Human hair. Uniformity was found centuries later when people started making balls out of something called vulcanized rubber, invented in the US. But the balls kept on breaking, so a British lawyer, who also loved tennis, suggested they put a flannel covering on the outside, and thus the tennis ball as we know it was born. One problem, it was either white or black. And when the controller of BBC Two, Sir David Attenborough, decided Wimbledon would be shown in colour on the BBC in 1967, no one could actually see the balls on telly. So the International Tennis Federation went away and created a new colour called optic yellow, which would show up without the need for a 4K LED display. Not that anyone had that in the 1960s, of course. Since then, all tennis balls have been covered in that material and have their trademark colour for that exact reason. Amateur tennis players and dogs worldwide are forever grateful. You could say the ITF aced it.
Good evening, this is the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. I am Hugh Woozencroft tonight alongside the former Chelsea and West Ham defender Scott Minto following a Carabao Cup humiliation. Where do Manchester United go from here? Can they be saved by the last few days of the transfer window, or does something need to change with Ruben Amorim? Either the formation he's wedded to or his position as head coach. Give us a call, 03717 223344. Elsewhere, we'll be joined by European football expert Andy Brassell, who'll take us through the Champions League draw and what it means for the English clubs. We're going to speak to talkSPORT's chief football correspondent Alex Crook about the latest transfer news. Chelsea look like they might be busy, unsurprisingly, over the last few days of the final of the window. And we'll talk Rangers with Russell Martin as well. They've made a terrible start under their new manager. It was compounded by the 9-1 aggregate defeat to Club Brugge in the Champions League qualifiers. Is August much too early to make a judgment on a manager, regardless of results? We want to hear from you, 03717 223344. This is Kick-Off, the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. If you just joined us, just a reminder, Crystal Palace have made it through into the full draw for the Conference League. Takes place tomorrow. Goalless draw with Fredrikstad of Norway. 1-0 win on aggregate. Just to let you know, some big games coming up this evening. Aberdeen level on 2-2 against FCSB, formerly Steaua Bucharest. Linfield taking on Shelburne. They've got a 3-1 deficit to make up. Hibs trailing Legia Warsaw by 2-1, and Shamrock Rovers 2-1 up against Santa Clara as well. We're going to have updates throughout the evening. I'll try and keep you posted with those scores, of course. Scott Minto alongside me. Good evening, my friend. How are you?
Good evening, mate. I'm really good. Slightly concerned about you. How are you?
The pressure might get, I've got to keep a close eye on it tonight because I'm going to take a step back when it comes to Manchester United. Okay. I think a lot of people need to have a bit of a breather when it comes to Ruben Amorim and Manchester United, but we'll explain it all a little bit later on this hour.
But isn't this what the football is all about? The passion, the tribalism, what it creates, and Manchester United, one of the biggest clubs in the world, if not the biggest, I say second biggest. Still, United fans were certainly hoping for something different, and that Arsenal performance was a very, very good one, but the second half at the Cottage and then what happened against Grimsby, wow.
Yeah, wow. Let's start with that grim night for Ruben Amorim in Cleethorpes as League Two Grimsby Town dumped Manchester United out of the Carabao Cup in the second round. The game, of course, was live here on talkSPORT.
Welcome to Cleethorpes on the banks of the Humber for the biggest game here in years. They've beaten Liverpool and Spurs in cup competitions in the 21st century, and tonight they eye up United. Burnham with a shot and a goal! It's 1-0 Grimsby Town! Charles Burnham beating another at the near post. The shock is on. Another in-swinging delivery. Oh, Nana has got nowhere near it. It's Grimsby 2, Manchester United 0.
This is real trouble now for Manchester United.
Ball deflecting inside the penalty area. It's another chance. It's 3, but the flag is up. Burma towards the edge of the penalty area, and there's one back. His first in Manchester United colours. Another corner, sending very deep, and the header's in. It's 2-2. It's Maguire. They're out of jail. We're going to penalties here at Blundell Park, and Burma with a little jogging run up has missed. It's hit the underside of the bar, and Grimsby Town have knocked Manchester United out of the League Cup.
And it was no less than they deserved as well. After going 2 goals up, Manchester United managed to level things, but in reality, they were second best for a large portion of that game. Scott and I are going to discuss it this hour. I want your views on it. I want to compartmentalise, if I can, because I think there's so much to discuss. So, when it comes to the manager, the tactics, or the players, I want to know what you would do in the short term and the long term. You can call us and say you want to just talk about the manager or just the tactics or the players alone, but I want to know your views on what you would do with the squad or the tactics or the manager in the short term and in the long term. Might be the same thing. We're going to get involved in the conversation once you give us your views. So give us a call, 03717 22 3344. And let's speak to a Manchester United fan, of course. talkSPORT's chief football correspondent and our transfer guru, Alex Crook, is with us. We will get the latest transfer news, but Alex, how are you feeling?
Crookie, how's the blood pressure now, mate?
I feel like I've been talking about this all day, to be honest, and yeah, still as humiliated as it was as I was last night watching the game. Honestly, it was such a poor performance from Manchester United, and as we were watching the penalty shootout, myself and my 2 sons, I was saying they better not celebrate. If they win this shootout, they better get off the pitch, back on the bus, and hang their heads in shame. And of course, they couldn't even get that bit right.
Wishful thinking.
Crookie, just tell everybody. Actually, you didn't watch the whole game, did you? Just tell everyone where you went and what you did.
So when the second goal went in, after Anana decided to have his chaotic moment, his second chaotic moment of the night, I stormed upstairs to build a bed. And I missed probably, the rest of that half, first 15 minutes of the second half. And then I had a pang of guilt because I left my sons, 11 and 13, in their United shirts watching the game on their own. I thought, right, I better go and show a bit of fatherly support here.
Yeah, especially when you heard the tears.
I hate DIY. That's how bad it was.
I don't think anyone's going to be sleeping in that bed, by the way.
Crookie, listen, on Manchester United, we're going to take the listeners' calls tonight on what they would do short and long term when it comes to the manager, the tactics and the players. What would you, out of those 3 things, say stands out most, and what would you do short and long term?
It's the tactics for me, and this is not a sort of reaction, knee-jerk reaction to what happened last night. I was at Fulham on Sunday. I was at the first game of the season against Arsenal, and certainly against Fulham, it was evident this system is not working. The back three, the wing backs, doesn't get the best out of Amad Diallo. He's wasted in that position. Actually didn't have a great night last night, partly because I'd imagine his head is all over the place. At one stage against Fulham, you had Mason Mount and Bruno Fernandes as the holding midfielder. What Kobbie Mainoo must have been thinking watching on the bench. Well, I think we know what he was thinking because I broke the story on Monday morning that he was potentially looking to leave before the window closes on Monday. So this is on Jason Wilcox now, who himself is relatively experienced, certainly at a club the size of Manchester United for the role that he's in. Omar Barada, maybe even Sir Jim Ratcliffe himself, to sit Ruben Amorim down. I understand there will be conversations during the international break and say, look, you've been here 9 months now. You've had 29 games in the Premier League. We've only got 28 points in that time, which is relegation form. Your formation is not working. You need to change it.
Do you think they'll do that, Crookie? Do you think they'll give what sounds like, if you were in charge, an ultimatum that if you don't change the tactics here, he could be gone?
Well, I know it's a much lower level, and I don't mean that with any disrespect to Southampton, but I know that those conversations did take place between the hierarchy there and Russell Martin last season. Obviously, Russell didn't change, ended up paying the price with his job. So it does happen, and I'm sure there were conversations between Daniel Levy and Ange Postecoglou at times last season as well, when he was so wedded to his system. The best managers, the best coaches, and we were told when Ruben Amorim came in, he was one of the best coaches in Europe. They mould to their circumstances. They don't shoehorn players into positions to suit their philosophy. They do it the other way around. They work out what the strengths are of their group and they come up with a pattern of play accordingly. And at the moment, Ruben Amorim isn't doing that.
Forget the hierarchy, asking the manager to change his tactics. I said after the Fulham game at the weekend, it won't be long before the players are saying to the manager, we want to change the approach. And when he said, Ruben Amorim, that last night the players spoke loudly, for me, that's exactly what he meant. The players told him, with their performance last night, they don't want to play his tactics. They're not interested in his tactics. It doesn't work for them. They don't enjoy it. They don't feel like they're at their best if they set up that way. And for me, not just set up that way, it's the approach. It's not the formation itself. You can approach a game differently depending on the actual formation. You know, we see teams playing in that formation who are very successful in the Premier League. We see ones who aren't as successful. It's the approach that Manchester United take in particular that doesn't work for them, doesn't work for this group of players. Scott, have you ever, as a group of players, sorry, Alex, for one second, have you ever, as a group of players have you encountered that in your career where the players have said to the manager, we just don't think this is working?
I think we've certainly had some robust conversations, but we've also realised that the manager is the manager and it's down to him whether he decides to change it or not. You know, I played under Glenn Hoddle, who tactically, as well as technically as a footballer, was just one of the best out there. And we sort of changed between 4-2 and 3-5-2. We believed in him. I think that's the important thing. The players need to believe in their manager. And for him to come out and say that now that the players spoke, whether he means that or whether he means he doesn't think the players are good enough, because don't forget, it's only really up front that it's kind of changed, attacking-wise, not necessarily in midfield and at the back. That tells me that he has to change things. I mean, I spoke to people I know in Portugal, just not just about this, but about the penalty situation, which we can come on, him sitting in the back looking like he's a naughty school kid about to get a detention in school. And I found out that actually that's what he does. Now, if that's a superstition, well, throw it out the window now, because it certainly didn't work. But I think optics is one thing, but you were manager of Sporting, one of the biggest clubs in Portugal. Now you're manager of Manchester United. And it's not just the fans of Manchester or for this country, but also around the world looking for leadership. And Sir Alex Ferguson wouldn't have done that. But going back to what you were saying, if he's saying that the players are saying they can't play that system, whether he is embedded to it or not, he has to change. But again, I'm hearing that's all he's done and he won't change. So for me, it sounds like he's going to fall on his sword at some point.
We're taking your views this hour on Manchester United. The manager, what would you do with him? What would you do with the position, short and long term, or the tactics, or the players? How do things need to change at Manchester United? 03717 22 3344. Alex Crook's still with us. We've got to talk about transfer news. It is the Transfer Insiders, and it looks like Newcastle's striker search could be finally over.
Yes, and I think we could see this deal as quite a significant one in the bigger picture at Newcastle, which obviously is the future of Alexander Isak. We'll come on to him in a moment. But yeah, fee agreed for the Stuttgart forward, Nick Voltemade. He's a player they've been looking at for some time, couldn't agree a deal earlier in the summer, obviously pivoted to other targets, most notably Jurgen Strand-Larsen at Wolves, had 2 offers rejected for him. There was a conversation in the last 24 hours between Jurgen Strand-Larsen and the Wolves hierarchy, during which he expressed a desire to leave. They made it clear, I'm told, that wouldn't happen in this window. So he will stay. Newcastle now not expected to come back for him. Good news for Wolves fans, but Voltemade on his way to St James's Park. 70 million euros up front, I'm told, with 5 million euros in add-ons. That is a club record signing. Now, the reason I say this is significant is because all the way along, Newcastle sources have been telling us they're looking for Callum Wilson replacements, not Alexander Isak replacements. I don't think this is a Callum Wilson replacement. He's 23 years of age. He's 6'6". He's tall. He's gangly. He's very much in the Alexander Isak mould. And I think this will give Liverpool encouragement to make a second offer for Alexander Isak, and that Newcastle will now potentially be ready to cash in on their star striker.
So it's news tonight that maybe the Newcastle fans aren't really going to celebrate because they're getting a new striker, but they're probably losing one of the best forwards in Europe right now.
I think... Well, yeah, go on, Cricky, go on.
I was going to say, and Scott will give a view on this, I think if you threw it open to Newcastle fans, there'd be a divide, because I think a lot of them are very upset with the way that Alexander Isak has conducted himself. Yes, there will be a lot of them that were desperate for him to stay because of the quality that he brings, but I think equally a lot of them will say, well, good riddance now because he's disrespected the badge and we need to move on from him.
I think it's all down to the Newcastle owners. We know that they're hamstrung by the PSR, but they don't have to sell. But the fact that they have brought in, and you know what, it's a risk, a young lad going to the north of England where he's, a foreign lad as well, and unproven in that way. I think he's got 12 goals in 28 appearances last season for Stuttgart. It's a big move. It's a big gamble. But the chat behind the scenes is absolutely crucial. If Isak is saying, I ain't playing for you, whatever, then it's down to the owners to determine and say, okay, well, let's do a deal. But it does look like maybe him plus Visser for Isak is how it's going to equal out.
Very quickly, Crookie, anything else we need to keep a close eye on?
Yeah, Xavi Simons, a player that Chelsea have been targeting for much of this transfer window. I reported this morning, along with Ben Jacobs, that he'd flown over to London to discuss talks with multiple clubs. We now know one of those clubs is Tottenham, and they are willing to pay 70 million euros to RB Leipzig to make this deal happen. We don't know yet if Chelsea will match that. I think they obviously are focusing on moving players on, the likes of Nkunku, who's off to AC Milan, and Nicholas Jackson potentially as well. They've got Alejandro Garnacho still in their sights. So there seems to be a little bit of confidence coming out of Spurs tonight. They can get this deal done, but obviously that will be tainted by the fact they've already been hijacked by Arsenal for Eberechi Eze. So they won't be counting any chickens, but certainly they're trying to make this deal happen.
Alex Crook, thank you very much indeed for being with us.
Go back to that bed, Crookie.
We'll be talking.
I know you won't make it in one go.
We'll be talking Manchester United a little bit later on this hour. So get your calls in 03717 223344. What needs to happen in the short term and the long term? What would you do around the manager, the tactics, or the players? You can have your say here on talkSPORT this evening. You're listening to Transfer Insiders with Coral. It's 18+. BeGambleAware.org. You're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. I'm Hugh Woozencroft alongside former Chelsea FA Cup winner Scott Minto. We're going to get back to the transfers shortly. We'll get your calls on Manchester United as well. So give us a call, 03717 at 223344. First, though, let's get an odds update with Ladbrokes.
Odds update on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. You build it, we give you a totally free bet this week and a big boost every day. That's Ladisfaction. 18+ gambleaware.org.
Delighted to welcome Cal Gildhart to the show. And we've got to start, Cal, with Manchester United. Unfortunately, I'd love to say the odds were just for their game against Burnley at the weekend, but there's a few specials, including around the manager, that you want to tell us about.
Evening, Hugh. Yeah, where'd you even begin with United? I told Natalie last night that I wouldn't be surprised to see 16-1 shots Grimsby take the lead, but blimey. Unsurprisingly, United's Premier League and FA Cup odds have gone out to 33-1 and 14-1 respectively. Something that did surprise me though is that we still have them odds on to finish in the top half at 1-5. Not sure if that's going to happen, but the big shift last night though, 25-1 to 2-1. Those are the odds on Ruben Amorim to be the next Premier League manager to leave. Only Graham Potter and Nuno are shorter. Our traders have also put together a permanent successor market for us. And despite his biggest cheerleader, Dan Ashworth, having left United, Sir Gareth Southgate leads the way at 6-1. Michael Carrick is the second favourite at 7-1. And a manager who looks like he can get a tune out of players in 3-4-3, Oliver Glasner, rounds out the top three at 9-1. One to watch for me, though, is Xavi. He's available and he's got a relationship with Omar Barada from the time at Barcelona. He's 10-1 to be United's next boss.
What do you think, Scott? If he were to leave, it's a big if to talk about replacements for Amorim, but Sir Gareth Southgate to Old Trafford?
I'm not sure he wants to go back into such a big hot seat. I said to you beforehand, and Cal, this will give you a little bit of time, so I mentioned the name. Do you know what? I see them so open at the moment. I just think they've got to stop conceding. And who's the person who actually, in my opinion, who's been the best Manchester United manager who understands the club since the Fergie era ended? I know he's lost his mojo, and I know that he lost to Benfica last night, my Benfica. But Jose Mourinho, for me, in the short term, I don't think he was given the chance. I think there was pure player power at that particular time. He won the Europa League. He said his biggest achievement, arguably, of his career was finishing second with United. And I just look at on the pitch about making United difficult to beat and not have chances against them. I don't see it right now. So although he may not be quite as high as he used to be, if I were a United fan, and I'm not, I wouldn't be unhappy with him coming back and, tightening things up at the back.
The first grenade of the hour launched by Scott Minto.
But I would give Amorim time. I'd give him time.
Cal, tell us about the Champions League. We'll be talking in the next hour with Andy Brassell, going over the draw from a little bit earlier on today. But how has that draw changed the standings in terms of the outrights?
Yeah, despite that Club World Cup final humbling to Chelsea, we've still got PSG as the 5-1 favourites to lift the European Cup next May, though they have drifted from 9-2 since the draw. Behind them are Barcelona at 6-1. In more good news for United fans, Liverpool are the 13-2 third favourites for the European Cup. They're just ahead of Arsenal, who've come into 7-1 from 15-2, which is the price you'll get on Real Madrid, while Man City sit at 9-1, which seems as big a price as they've been for several years, and that looks decent to me. Chelsea at 12-1 also look decent just because of their tournament successes under Enzo Maresca. But I would say the most intriguing team is an each-way squeak, especially after what looks like a favourable league phase draw, and Napoli. Like Antonio Conte's European record does leave a lot to be desired, but Serie A's been represented in 2 of the past 3 finals, and if there's any Italian side that's going to make it 3 and 4, the Italian champions are might shout at 25-1 with Ladbrokes.
Okay, Cal, thank you very much indeed. Maybe it could be an Italian winner for the first time in a long time, but that was a look at the latest odds with Ladbrokes. It's 18+, begambleaware.org.
Odds update on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. You build it, we give you a totally free bet this week and a big boost every day. That's Ladisfaction. 18+ gambleaware.org.
We're going to get into it in a little bit more detail. As I mentioned, after 8 o'clock, we'll be looking at some of the big teams in the Champions League this year and looking at the draw for the 6 Premier League teams. Yeah, 6 of them next year. So plenty for us to pour over with Andy Brassell after 8 o'clock. But as we stand today, Scott, who would you make favourites for the Champions League? Would you agree with Paris Saint-Germain or someone else?
Do you know what, Hugh? I'll give who I think will at the end, but actually I think PSG have proven that you can't predict this month, at the beginning of a season. What happened to them, and even up until Christmas time, they got through the playoffs. Yeah. So who would have thought at that particular time, and especially when they were 2-0 down to City, that they'd go on and absolutely dominate all the teams, including mostly Premier League, what they do. So I think teams develop as the season goes on, and that's certainly what happened with PSG. Look, Chelsea out PSG'd PSG in the Club World Cup, didn't they? I thought they were absolutely superb. 12-1. They could be a cup side. I agree with Cal, though. City at 9-1. Again, I didn't go for them in terms of my season predictions for the Premier League because I thought Arsenal just looked stronger and City looked vulnerable in the Club World Cup, the game against Al Hilal and, of course, against Spurs as well. But in terms of, again, a cup competition, I think they can beat anybody in their day. So in terms of value, I'd go City, but yeah, PSG and Barca for me, and Liverpool.
Three teams will be back stronger in the Champions League this year for me. Real Madrid, because they rarely put together 2 bad years in a row, and I think they weren't great last year. Generally speaking, the second half of the season, but certainly in the Champions League, they would have expected to perform better, not lose 5-1. Even if they were going to get knocked out by Arsenal, not lose 5-1 on aggregate. That's just not very much like Real Madrid. So I expect them to be better. But the 2 English teams, Liverpool and Arsenal who've quarter-final, semi-final, getting more experience in the Champions League for me. But also I think it being a cup competition and their defence being so solid is a great platform in a cup competition. Obviously, they've added in attack as well. So keep an eye on Arsenal for me. And you can't take your eyes off Liverpool because, again, I think for them, with their pedigree in the Champions League, last season was a big disappointment. They'll be back stronger. So I'm keeping my eyes on Arsenal and Liverpool for sure. We're going to talk about it more we'll see. After 8 o'clock as well. I just want to remind you before we break, though, plenty of live football coming for you across the talkSPORT network this weekend. Tomorrow night, I'm with you exclusively live on talkSPORT 2 for Leicester against Birmingham in the Championship. We've got another London derby for Chelsea at the start of this Premier League campaign, exclusively live here on talkSPORT. Saturday lunchtime, Chelsea versus Fulham. Over on talkSPORT 2 at lunchtime, we'll have Middlesbrough against Sheffield United. Game day live with Adrian Durham, Troy Deeney, Darren Ben and Mickey Gray from 2:30 here on talkSPORT with all the goals as they go in, including a massive game now. Relegation 6-pointer for Manchester United against Burnley. Ipswich versus Derby is the 3 p.m. kickoff on talkSPORT 2. Sunday, we'll also have Game Day Live. It's at 1:30. Scott will be with you alongside Perry Groves and Sam Matterface. Manchester City taking on Brighton, Forest taking on West Ham, Liverpool, Arsenal, the big game on Sunday as well. Sam will be at Anfield for that one. At 7 p.m, we've got an exclusive kickoff on Sunday night as well as Aston Villa take on Crystal Palace. But up next, we'll be taking your calls on Manchester United. 03717 223344. This is the Transfer Insiders with Ladbrokes. 18+, begambleaware.org.
teams have got a load of crazy nicknames. Ever wondered where they came from? Some are pretty straightforward. Arsenal are the Gunners because they were founded by a group of munitions workers, and Bournemouth are the Cherries because their old stadium was built right next to a cherry orchard. Then there's Everton. They're dubbed the Toffees, but why? Well, because when the club was formed, just down the road there were 2 local toffee shops. Ipswich Town nicked their nickname off their opponents in the late 90s, Birmingham. The term Tractor Boys was chanted as a way to tease the team about their farming background, but they started using it themselves as a way to cheer on the team in victory instead. Take that, Birmingham. Let's head to Leicester, famous for more than just a red, well, orangey cheese and Jamie Vardy. Leicestershire's also the birthplace of fox hunting, hence the Foxes. Crystal Palace's nickname came from an extreme makeover. They were having a nightmare run in the 70s, and when they were relegated, their manager, Malcolm Allison, wasn't having it. I know what will make us better, he thought, a new nickname. The Strong and Deadly Eagle sounded like a pretty good bet. And there's more to that story. Brighton used Palace's nickname to inspire their own. Ooh, bird, they thought. Let's just pick a different one for us. And so, in a heated match between the two teams back in 1976, when Palace fans began chanting "Eagles, Eagles," Brighton fans had the perfect reply: "Seagulls, Seagulls." So next time the away ends chanting their crazy nickname, you'll now know exactly where it came from.
For Insiders on talkSPORT. Hello, you're listening to Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. Hugh Woozencroft here alongside Scott Minto, the former Chelsea and West Ham defender. Remember, this coming Monday, it's the 1st of September, the transfer window. They can only slam shut the transfer window. It doesn't close. It's always slam shut. It will be at 7 p.m. And we will have a live deadline day drive show for you with Andy Goldstein and Darren Bent starting at 4 o'clock. That's followed by a deadline day special with Mr. Deadline Day himself, Jim White, our chief football correspondent, Alex Crook, and former Liverpool midfielder Danny Murphy. They'll be analysing and dissecting all of those last-minute deals. Many of the news of which comes in after that deadline actually as well. So stay tuned for that. talkSPORT gives you the inside track on who your club is signing. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest deals as they happen. But we are talking at Manchester United this hour. United yet to win this season. It's the first time they've ever lost to a 4-tier side in the Carabao Cup. Ruben Amorim not watching their penalties as they went out to Grimsby. Credit to Grimsby, by the way, in the way that they approached that game and the result that they got. We'll talk about Benjamin Sesko as well, taking the 10th penalty, what that means for him as well. So much for us to discuss. The manager, the tactics, the players. I want your view on it. 03717 223344. Let's start by hearing from Ruben Amorim himself. After the game, he was rather cryptic about his future when speaking to our very own Jim Proudfoot, but he did suggest that something needs to change.
Ruben, thank you very much for your time. What's the most disappointing aspect of that performance tonight?
Everything. The way we start the game, we were not even here. When everything is so important in our club, everything that happened, it's a problem in our club. We should do so much better. So I just have to say sorry to our fans, and I felt my players spoke really loud today what they want.
Can you just elaborate on that? What you mean? Your players spoke very loud on what they want.
Easy for you. Let's focus on the next game, and then we have the stop for the international games. We will think things through.
When it came to penalties, did it matter from that point, having been taken to penalties, what the result was?
Doesn't matter. In the penalties, the feeling is the same. I think football was really fair today. The best team won.
Is it fair to say, Ruben, that a lot of the mistakes that you saw tonight, a lot of the problems tonight are problems that you saw the back end of last season, that there has been no discernible improvement?
And that is more than the result, that is the biggest problem in the team. I think was really clear today.
So there you go, Ruben Amorim. Yep, he was rather cryptic. It actually cracked me up. I watched all of the interviews he gave afterwards, listened to all of them, and every time he mentioned that, I think the players spoke loudly. Every single reporter went, what exactly do you mean by that? And he went, I think you know. And he gave him a little wink, and I was like, I haven't got a clue.
No.
I haven't got a clue what you're talking about, Ruben. So it was obvious to him. Wasn't as obvious, I think, to the rest of us. We're going to get to your calls. Scott, we got more to come from you, but I want you to react to what some of our callers on talkSPORT have to say this evening. 03717 223344 if you want to get involved. We're going to start with Charlie, who's a United fan. Good evening. You're here to talk about the manager. Tell us more.
Yeah, I think I don't think it's the tactics. I don't think it's the manager. I don't think it's the system. These are the same players that have down tools for the last 3 or 4 managers. They're the same people. It's a completely different system Ten Hag was playing. He was playing 4 at the back, but it's the same players that down tools and got him sacked. So I don't think it's the same. And especially the Grimsby game, you look at that in isolation, it doesn't matter about the tactics, the system, the manager. Those players should go out on the pitch and beat that team. Their quality in itself should be beating that team. So yeah, I can't understand this whole it's the manager, it's the system, it's the players. And unfortunately, when you look at the first 10 minutes of the Fulham game, we were a lot better. We played well because the defence were close to the attack and the midfield weren't exposed. We haven't got the players in the midfield to play that system. If we had a Belieber or we had a Mainu that played in that position, you might have you got legs of Belieber to play that system. Casemiro can't play it. Who else? Like, Ugarte, unfortunately, he's not good enough on the ball. He's good at breaking up playing, but he's not a Belieber. So I think if you had the right players, that manager and Amorim would do really well.
So, Charlie, what's your take on what Amorim meant by the players spoke loudly?
It's the same reason, like Ranić said. The players didn't play for Ranić, ended up having the worst, Premier League position. Obviously, Amorim's beat that, but at that point, the players let him down.
So, do you think he's lost the players? Then that's what he's saying.
Well, I think they're not playing. They're down in tools. They're waiting for him to get the sack. You look at Mainu last night. I don't think he had a great game. I think there's so much controversy about what his future lies at Manchester United. I don't think he's playing for Amorim. So they're the same, like I said, unless the culture changes and the players that, I know he's got this bomb squad that he wants to eventually get them out. But it's more than just 6 players of a bomb squad. He needs a proper culture change at United. And unfortunately, that stems from the top. It stems from, people like Jim Radcliffe, Barada, Wilcox, all of these people that have come in and ultimately have run the club poorly. It's them that need to take a look at themselves more than the manager. If you change them, every time you can change a manager, the same thing's going to happen. We got 5 sets of players. We got 5 sets of players from different managers in that team. It just doesn't work.
Charlie, appreciate your call, getting us started this evening on talkSPORT. There's a lot of clubs in that situation. That's the only thing I'd say about it. There are many clubs in the Premier League who've changed managers over the last 4 or 5 years. They've had 4 or 5 different managers as well. I can tell you now, going away to Grimsby, we would have seen better performances from pretty much every team in the Premier League, including ones that just came up from the Championship. Maybe you're right, though. It is possibly on the players for that performance last night rather than the tactics, rather than the coach. Keep your calls coming in. Should we go to a break or should we squeeze one more in? Michael is a Manchester United fan. Let's squeeze it in. Michael, who do you find responsible for what's going on? Do you think it's either the manager, tactics or players?
Everyone's accountable. Everyone should be standing up and take a name and shame them. I named and shamed Amorim from the beginning of last season. He should have gone. He should have gone then, and he should go now. And like every manager who came in, look at David Moyes. Look what he did to Everton. Look at the guy who took over Wolves. They're winning football matches. We're not in winning football matches. Data said to them, because I watched Sky Sports, the data said we need front 3. Okay, did anyone mention about a goalkeeper? We knew he was dodgy as hell. He's still dodgy. All of them are. Why didn't Tom Heaton play yesterday? Go and get David De Gea. There is a chance that you should get David De Gea back. We should go and get him.
There is. Can I just put to you though? The manager came in. What was your reaction when he said initially that there would be suffering? I think it's the phrase that he used, where he did kind of intimate things will get worse before they get better. Did you have any space for that? Did you think that was a possibility? Were you okay with that when he announced it?
No, because you're a manager of any football club, you're meant to be adaptable. This guy is clearly not adaptable. When Ten Hag came in, remember, Ten Hag's won 2 trophies, he changed his style. Look what happened then. When he changed it, he won football matches. So if he wants to play, this is Man United. This is not Sporting Lisbon. He cannot play. This system will never work for Manchester United. We've seen it. Game after game after game. We've seen when he got battered, and yesterday was the worst of them all.
So, Michael, you want him out. Who do you want in? And will that change everything?
It was for short term. I want to be tough with a beat. I would bring Mourinho in just for now. I'd bring Mourinho in. At least when Mourinho came in, the reason he got sacked, this was under the Glazers' watch, he wanted 2 centre-backs, and the board said no to him.
Yep.
So he was a different man walking since that point. I would have Mourinho back. I'd even have Ollie back.
Michael, appreciate your call.
He's agreeing with me on Jose there. And
you asked me earlier.
I said about Ollie.
Who was
said Ollie.
Yeah, I did say Ollie. Listen, there is just a part of me that thinks there is obviously something going on at Manchester United that's probably bigger than changing manager. The manager has to change, but we don't necessarily have to change manager. We brought in a young and inexperienced manager. This is what I advocated for on the show. Everyone knows. I said, get someone like Ruben Amorim, get someone who we can go on the journey with over 4 or 5 years as the squad improves, as players improve. Our coach is going to have to improve as well. I knew he wasn't the finished article. No, Manchester United did not bring in a top draw elite manager with respect to what Ruben Amorim's done in the past. This is not a Champions League winning manager. This is not a manager that's been winning titles in a top 5 division. This is not one of the great managers in European football. He was always going to have to take time to become that. And I thought when he was appointed, everyone knew that it would take time. Now, the only argument to that in my mind is he hitting the minimum standards required for his job?
Well,
and there might be an argument soon that he's not.
He's made a poor Manchester United side look even worse. Yeah. That's my worry. And you know me, I mean, I played in Portugal. I love all things Portuguese, despite him being Sporting, not Benfica, though he played for Benfica. I really want him to do well, but it's been Ten Hag from Netherlands now and Ruben Amorim from Portugal. And the board have to make a decision. They have to make a decision, and they have to make it soon. You know, do we actually stop this rot right now? Because it looks like the Garnacho deal is going to be happening. You know, are they going to bring in a goalkeeper? Are they going to change the system? Because the way he's going at the moment, nothing seems to change. They lift themselves up. I was a little bit, blanket over my head watching the Arsenal game because I thought that, okay, they're kind of getting on their way back. But the 2 performances since, and the fact is obvious stubbornness not to change, to be adaptable, which is what the top managers do. Look at Thomas Frank, what he's already doing. And let's not go too big on him right now, but you only make one go at a first impression, and Thomas Frank is doing exceptionally well. And Ruben Amorim, as much as the United fans are desperate to get behind him, there's a lot of them falling by the wayside in terms of support for him.
I'll be saying, I hate to say I told you so straight after this, so stay tuned for that. I'll be going back on some of the views that I told you about Manchester United before the season started. You're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. It's 18+, begambleaware.org. Give us a call. Are you going to stay patient with Ruben Amorim despite the glaring issues? Do you believe United should cut their losses? 03717 223344. We'll take more of your calls. And then after 8, we'll be joined by our European football expert, Andy Brassell, to discuss today's Champions League draw. So stay with us for that. Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. We get to your calls on Manchester United once again in a few moments. So 03717 223344 if you want to get involved. But we have to get Scott's thoughts on the breaking news that talkSPORT understands Chelsea have agreed a £40 million deal for Manchester United forward Alejandro Garnacho. He's been part of the bomb squad, hasn't he, at Manchester United? One of those, actually, that was kind of persona non grata from the end of last season. Reports that Amorim had told him straight after that Europa League final when he went to the media and kind of complained about his game time in that match and suggested that he was one of the key reasons Man United had even made it that far in the competition. The reports were the next day Amorim told him to find a new club in front of the rest of the players. So we felt that this was going to come for a while, but it's virtually happening at the end of the transfer window, a few days out. Chelsea, £40 million. Firstly, from Chelsea's perspective, is this a good deal? Is it good value at that price?
Well, I don't like the things that he's done. As you just alluded to a couple of things there, it's almost like it's all about me. And that's the last thing that Enzo Maresca wants. But what I do think is, one, he's incredibly talented. And two, there is that left wing berth that's still open. Estevao looks like he's going to be a brilliant player, but he's still only 18. Jamie Gittins has only just signed, and he's still getting to know, how to play for Chelsea and under Enzo Maresca. So from a purely playing point of view, if you want 2 or 3 really good wingers, and let's not forget, Chelsea are not just Europa Conference, they're the Champions League as well as Premier League and the domestic cups as well. You need a deep squad. So from Chelsea's point of view, and I think Enzo Maresca will put him in his place at times, and he'll have to deal with it because he can't keep on going out and being public if he's not happy with whatever. Otherwise, people just won't touch him. I think it's a really good signing. What does it tell me from United's angle? It tells me that Ruben Amorim's not going anywhere right now.
A mate called me today, Manchester United fan, and he was actually concerned. We were talking about Kobbie Mainoo, and he said, what about the record, of course, of having a player from the academy in the squad for 4,000 games or whatever it is, some ridiculous number.
30s or something.
Decades and decades and decades, right? And that is important to Manchester United fans. And he said, Garnacho's going to go, and Mainoo's the only other player who's, they will find a player. I'm sure they will keep it going. They will put a player from the academy on the bench at least for a match day. But you want players to be playing out of the academy. And actually, we haven't got one who's going to play regular minutes out of the academy at this moment. And that would be a real sad thing for Manchester United. Obviously, a lot of Man United fans want Garnacho to go because of the discipline issues. We don't want Kobbie Mainoo to go. Yeah, I did want Garnacho to go, absolutely. Watching the game last night, I was like, hold on a minute, fellas. I think we might need him, and to be honest, you look at a lot of the bomb squad, Anthony. I think Man United might need him in the squad. They need these options at the moment. They aren't very good going forward. They haven't got a lot of depth. And forward players are leaving the squad, with some quality at least. Obviously, personality is probably the biggest issue rather than talent. But, there's nothing coming in that regard. They've got these 3 frontline players. And
might it now that now they've sold, or they're going to be selling Garnacho? I sort of said, look, they absolutely need a goalkeeper right now. I cannot begin to try to explain how important a goalkeeper is. It's, the strikers and the number 10s are seen as the sexy position. But actually, I feel if you had to really pin me down, what's the single most important position on the pitch? I think it's goalkeeper, because you can replace strikers. You can have 2 up front. You can have a couple off the bench. You can, you've got options there. Someone might be injured. Goalkeepers rarely get injured, and you hardly ever see them, despite what Mikel Arteta said a couple of years ago, subbed in a game. A top goalkeeper, and Brian Clough even said it once, which is why he just said, I had to get Peter Shilton, and from then on I knew I could win what I won. It's so important to get a top goalkeeper, and they haven't. Those 2 goals wouldn't have happened against Grimsby last night, and then the pressure wouldn't have built up. But keeper and centre midfielder, I don't think they're going to get both of those. I don't think they're going to get any of those, to be honest with you, but that's what United need.
Adam is a Manchester United fan. He's given us a call on talkSPORT this evening. He wants to discuss the goalkeeper situation, so he's a perfect caller. Good evening.
Fellas, how are you?
Hi, Adam.
Very well indeed. I won't ask you your view on Andre Onana because we don't want to dump anything. But what should Manchester United do about their goalkeeping position?
Well, looking back from the whole of last season, we knew that Onana was not good enough, and last night proved it with those. For an international goalkeeper, they were sloppy mistakes. And we've spent the majority of the transfer window getting in Cunha again last night, poor game. And Bamo, again, we spent how many weeks trying to get him? But actually, we've a goalkeeper is what we've needed. I mean, to be fair, I wouldn't be surprised if on Saturday or Sunday when we play Burnley, we'll have Heaton playing in goal. And I'm surprised as well. Anana wasn't subbed during the penalty shootout last night because his record isn't good enough. In the last, I think, 23 penalties he's faced, he's saved 3.
Yeah, no, he's not. Listen,
he wasn't great in the penalty. I mean, he got his hand to 3 of them as well, didn't he? But it never really looked like saving them.
This is my issue. I was talking to Scott a little bit earlier on about this bomb squad of Manchester United and the players that should have been forced out of the door. And Andre Onana should have been one of those players. And some of the high earners should have been on that list, the likes of Casemiro, even the likes of Luke Shaw. Now, it's not to say they would have left the football club. There probably isn't even a decent market for those players. But for Manchester United to finish 15th in the Premier League and the only player to be leaving at this point in time is Alejandro Garnacho, who's about to go on his way to Chelsea, is amazing.
Window. It's been poor. I mean, you look at other teams as well. They've spent 200 million like we have, but they've also recuperated a lot of that by getting rid of the players. Chelsea have recouped nearly 200 million.
Over 250, Adam, and that was going to be my example as well. Whatever you say about Chelsea and how much they've spent, they're very good at selling as well.
Exactly, and that's for since the Glazers, our selling has been poor. Yeah, we buy. Yeah, when it comes to selling, we are really poor at trying to sell the players and trade the money. Like, look at Anthony. Yeah, we're dealing with Betis, and that's been going on for the whole transfer window again.
Yeah. Adam, thank you very much for your call. Sorry to interrupt you. I'm just going to try and squeeze in one more call before we get to the news. Kenny is a Manchester United fan. Good evening.
Good evening, gents. Are you okay?
Hi, Kenny. Good, mate. How are you?
Been better.
Yeah, I'm great, lad. I'm great. I'm looking forward to the game against Burnley at the weekend.
What would you do if you were Ruben Amorim with that team?
What would I do with Ruben Amorim? I would start the team that finished. Definite. I think he's got to move away from Delors. I think it's it's a bit like a comfort blanket for him. I don't know if it's because they speak the same language, but it seems to be his favourite. Bruno, even when Bruno plays badly, we still seem to need him on the pitch. Because we look even worse when he's not playing. So I'm of the opinion that we've got to continue with the manager, definitely, because we've been here before, we've always seen it. I was at the Arsenal game, I thought we were excellent against Arsenal. I could see the system, I could see the transitions of play. I liked that we played in our line, I could see that De Ligt and Shaw were stepping in and Euro, they were breaking play up. I thought this is how we need to play. Last night was off again.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Kenny. Appreciate it. Sorry to interrupt you. We do have to break and really appreciate your call on talkSPORT this evening. Just to let you know, this Saturday, 2 former UFC challengers are swapping the cage for the ring. Darren Till taking on former MMA world champion Luke Rockhold in his boxing debut. You can watch it live on Saturday only on DAZN.
Boxing update on talkSPORT with DAZN, the global home of boxing. Sign up now at dazn.com/boxing.
Well, the Manchester United fallout is going to continue probably for months. Let's see what happens at Saturday, 3 o'clock at Old Trafford. Manchester United hosting Burnley. Up next, though, we're going to be joined in the studio by European football expert Andy Brassell. We'll run through the Champions League draw, which took place earlier this evening. Stay with us.
Thomas Tuchel's busy trying to bring glory back to England for the first time since '66. But how did he get here? Well, from the sleepy town of Grimsby via some giants of European football, here's his journey to Wembley. Sitting around 60 miles west of Munich, Grimsby's population is less than 14,000 people. But Tuchel's friends there remember a boy whose ambitions lay far beyond the Bavarian community. His will to win was evident early. Tuchel often captained his youth football teams, and his school side lifted the national German football trophy in 1987. The Sport took the young defender on a whistle-stop tour of South Germany, from Augsburg to Stuttgart and then Ulm. A knee injury ended his playing career at the age of 25, though. Tuchel accepted his first coaching role in the Stuttgart youth setup in 2000, hired by none other than Ralf Rangnick. Under Tuchel's stewardship, the club's under-19s won their league title in 2005. But Stuttgart chose not to renew his contract, feeling Tuchel had an abrasive personality. He went on to manage Augsburg's second team before spending 5 years at the helm at Mainz. He then followed in Jurgen Klopp's footsteps and moved from Mainz to Dortmund. Here, Tuchel secured his first major silverware, the German Cup, in 2017. 8 more major trophies came next for Tuchel in just 5 glorious seasons. He won 2 Ligue 1 titles and a pair of domestic cups as PSG boss. At Chelsea, he famously lifted the Champions League, as well as a Super Cup and a Club World Cup, and he also bagged a Bundesliga at Bayern Munich. And then, 4 months after leaving Bayern, Tuchel was unveiled as England's new manager.
I always wanted to come back to England. That was my big goal. I have the best memories of the country, of the league and of the players, the attitude towards the game, the attitudes from the supporters.
Well, here's hoping Tuchel can finally drag England over the line at a major tournament.
This is the Transfer Insiders. I'm Hugh Woozencroft alongside former Chelsea and Benfica defender Scott Minto. This hour we've got the pleasure of being joined in the studio by Andy Brassell to discuss the Champions League draw. 6 teams taking part this year from the Premier League. That's more than ever. We're going to look at their draws in more detail and ask who's most likely to advance, who could struggle, and who will be dark horses. Andy will have it all for us. Get in touch if you've got any questions. Give us a call. You can text us as well on 81089 or leave us a voice note at 03717 223344. We'd love to hear from you. This is the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. Just to let you know, still goalless in the early stages in all the games involving teams in their European qualifiers. A little bit earlier on, Crystal Palace did make it through to the group stage, the league phase, in the Conference League. We're going to talk about the league phase in the Champions League. That draw was made a little bit earlier on, so let's take a look ahead with Ladbrokes.
The big preview on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. You build it, we give you a totally free bet this week and a big boost every day. That's Ladisfaction. 18 plus gambleaware.org.
Andy Brassell alongside myself and Scott. Good evening. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
I'm good.
Really good, mate.
Before we get to the details of the draw, I did want to pick your brains very quickly on the behalf of Newcastle United fans.
Please do.
£64 million. Nick Voltemada, German full international under 21. He was great, wasn't he, for the under 21s in the European Championships?
Yeah.
Exactly. £64 million from Stuttgart. Will he be a great addition for them?
I think he'll be a really good addition, and it's really impressive how they've kept this on the down low, because that's been the problem with their summer so far, isn't it? That they keep getting gazumped by other clubs. What's also interesting is the fact that Bayern weren't prepared to go all in for him. They're very, very keen. He was keen to go there. They wouldn't get to the number that Newcastle have got to. And it's really been a meteoric rise for him because he arrived on a free transfer from Werder Bremen where he wasn't a regular last summer. And Stuttgart have turned him into this player in the space of less than a year, really, because he had a slow start to last season. But I think if you're looking for someone who's quite a faithful replacement for Isak with a high upside, I'm not sure you could have signed many better players than him because he's a big guy, he's 6'6", but he's not your typical target man. He likes to drop, he likes to dribble. When Bayern wanted him, and Bayern were very keen, as I said, they wanted him not just as backup to Harry Kane, they thought he could play with Harry Kane. I don't know if there are many higher compliments than that because he's got very high football intelligence. He doesn't lose the ball very often. And funnily enough, he's constantly progressing. Because I was talking to Claudio Pizarro, actually, another great Bundesliga striker, about him a couple of weeks ago. And he said to me, this was on the day of the German Super Cup, he said, I would really like Voltemade to get better with his back to goal, to be better in the air. And lo and behold, a couple of hours later, he played against Bayern. He was doing exactly that. With the rest of his team, as you would expect when they're playing against Bayern, 25, 30 yards away from him, and he was still managing to hold the ball up, keep a couple of defenders off him. He's learnt to use his body better. And I think it's quite interesting, not that, this says where they are in terms of their quality at the moment, because obviously Isak has become one of the best, very best strikers in the Premier League. But whereas Isak, a lot of what he's done has harmed himself as much as anything else, because if he was to go to Liverpool tomorrow, he's not fit to play, is he? Whereas Voltemade, who desperately wanted to go to Bayern, to the extent where he told his agent, OK, I don't care if Real Madrid are talking to you. I don't care if Napoli are talking to you, which they were. I don't want to go to any of those places. I want to go to Bayern. But he never sulked. He went away and worked on his game. And he turned up in the Super Cup and played brilliantly, actually, really, really well, even if it was in a losing battle against the best team in Germany and one of the best teams in Europe. So it's a lot of money, obviously, but if I was a Newcastle board member, let alone fan, I'd be way more comfortable spending that sort of money on him than Jurgen Strand-Larsen. Jurgen Strand-Larsen did great last season, but I feel he's pretty close to the ceiling. Voltemade has progressed so much and has got a long way to go, I think.
Okay, something for the Newcastle fans to be excited about. Nick Voltemade, if you're just joining us, Stuttgart striker, linked with a move to Newcastle very strongly, we believe, for £64 million. But Andy is here to discuss the Champions League phase. The draw has been made for the fixtures. If you missed it, here's how it all went down on talkSPORT earlier.
Of the box, slams it in to ensure that Liverpool's nerves will no longer jangle.
Real Madrid have got to go to Anfield.
So that means Trent will be back at Anfield.
Yes.
Haaland! 1-0 Manchester City, and it is a sublime goal!
I almost feel like with Manchester City with their draws, it doesn't really matter who they draw in. Every season, I almost fall for the same trick where I think, it doesn't really matter who they got.
Arsenal 2, Real Madrid 0. Declan Rice at the double.
Some tough away games, but generally I don't think that's too bad for Arsenal at all.
Chelsea become the first team in history to win the full set of European trophies.
When I saw Barca, it's like Barca at home. Oh, come on. That's proper Champions League football. And that's what this new format has done.
What a fantastic season this has been for Newcastle. Champions League football, Carabao Cup.
They've got to go to the Parc des Princes, they've got to go to the Bayer Arena to face Leverkusen, they've got to go to the Velodrome to take on Marseille. So some belters in there.
Tottenham currently fourth bottom in the Premier League. They'll be in the Champions League next season.
I think they'll look at that list and think some fun games, but we can absolutely go through.
So we're going to run through the fixtures for Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, Manchester City, Newcastle and Tottenham over the next 40 or so minutes. I'm going to do it in alphabetical order. I don't want anyone to get angry with me on Transfer Insiders this evening. So we're going to start with Arsenal. And also I think this one's fairly straightforward for Mikel Arteta's side. They're at home to Bayern Munich, away at Inter Milan. They'll face Atleti at home, Club Brugge away, Olympiacos at home, Slavia Prague away, Kairat Almaty, the long journey, not for them, they'll be at home, and then Athletic Club of Spain away. What do you make of the fixtures that Arsenal have in front of them, Andy?
There are some hard ones in there. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think you look at the top three. Well, you could say four actually, because Club Brugge obviously had a very, very good 2 legs against Rangers and just showed how good they are. They're very underrated. Remember, they knocked Atalanta out of the Champions League last year after getting past the group stage, the league stage. So I think what you've got to look at with each of these is the fact that the first year of the new format has given us an idea of what you need, really. Yeah. So you probably need 10 points to get top 24 and 15 points to get top 8. So basically, if you want to save yourself a couple of games, and everyone wants a couple of games off in February, by the way, you know, that's the best thing you could possibly ask for. You're looking at 5 wins. So I guess you're looking at where those are coming from. As you said, Hugh, Kairat at home definitely helps. But I think if you're looking at atmospheric away games, it's going to be noisy at Athletic, it's going to be noisy at Inter, it's going to be noisy at Club Brugge, and it's going to be noisy in Slavia Prague as well, which you would say still is one of the easier ones. It's a bonus not to have to go to Olympiacos. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Look, Arsenal are definitely getting top 24. I guess the question is, especially once you're getting into the back end of these league stage fixtures, how do you balance the team? Do you decide, okay, we've got enough for the top 24, let's give a few players a rest? Do you take that risk? Because I think it was different last year. You look at last year and no one really knew what the magic number was. No one knew what was the, we used to say 40 points to avoid relegation. Obviously, it's a lot less than that in the Premier League now. But, to have that marker, I think is quite helpful, and it will probably help the bigger teams shuffle. Arsenal are going through, no problem, but there are a few banana skins in there.
I agree with you about Olympiacos at home rather than away. The San Mamés, although obviously we saw what happened in the semi-final the Europa League, where United absolutely, it's an incredible performance, and I worked in it. Where are they right now? Atleti have spent a lot of money, and what about Inter as well after that, chastening final defeat, and obviously the manager not there anymore.
Yeah, and a very inexperienced coach at top level, Christian Kivu, though someone who knows the club really well, has a lot of respect there. It'd be interesting to see him develop his own style beyond what Simone Inzaghi was doing, but great start to the season for them. They absolutely thwacked Torino 5-0 at the weekend. And really, their job was to not panic after the Champions League final, because realistically, they should have won the double in Italy last season. They were the best team in Italy. They managed to make a mess of the Coppa Italia semi-final. They managed to make a mess of the last couple of games at the end of the season, with all due respect and credit to Antonio Conte and Napoli. And they've managed to not panic, which I think makes them still a contender going into this season, even though you probably have to say PSG and Barcelona are the two teams to beat still. I think Bayern are underrated. So I'm interested to see what they do to strengthen the squad. Of course, at the moment, we don't know what order these games are going to be played in. We're going to find that out on Saturday. So we can't talk about Bayern as being an opener, even though that's at the top. Atletico, as you say, Scott, I think are really interesting because they've spent more money on transfers than any team outside the Premier League. It's a not inconsiderable amount after spending quite a lot last summer. Now, on one hand, that means they've got a lot of talent. They've got younger legs. Also, though, we've seen in the opening couple of games of this season, they've got a few flaws which you wouldn't associate with Diego Simeone teams. Like, we've looked at them over the last couple of seasons and thought, when did they start conceding goals off set pieces? And now they've started conceding goals on the counter-attack as well. So it's really difficult to know what to expect for them.
We've seen that with Liverpool as well, haven't we?
Yeah.
Players coming in and not looking so good defensively. Even though on paper it looks like squads have been strengthened, it still takes time for everybody to develop relationships on and off.
It's wholesale change, isn't it? Yeah.
Let's talk about Chelsea very, very quickly. Some great
Why quickly, Hugh? Why? Have we not got the rest of the hour on Chelsea?
There's a break coming up.
He wants to spend an hour on Chelsea Benfica. Come on.
Exactly.
I mean, it's one for Scott to reminisce over his former club. Benfica will be heading to Stamford Bridge, as will Barcelona, in a bit of Champions League heritage. Chelsea will go away to Bayern Munich, who we've mentioned. They're away at Atalanta and Napoli as well in Italy. They'll have home games against Ajax and Paphos of Cyprus, and a long trip to Karabakh as well.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't want that one, did they? I think that's
Azerbaijan, for those of you that don't know.
That's the one out of plot 4 that no one wanted. And I think you look at the rest of them, it's actually quite difficult, the Chelsea one. I don't feel confident in saying they're hitting top 8, and not just because they weren't in the Champions League last season. Look, I think this is such a test this season for Chelsea, because the rhythm that they're going to have to find to play matches of a high standard every couple of days is way different to last season. Maresca had this luxury of like testing out the squad and keeping everyone happy to a greater or lesser extent, which he would never have again with the Conference League last season.
He played a different 11.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, it was a partially different squad, wasn't it? You know, leaving Cole Palmer out for the first half of the season. Whereas you look at this, the away trips are tough. There's no doubt about that. You know, there's distance with Karabakh, and of course they've got a bit of experience at this level. But even Paphos, I think, are quite interesting. You know, coached by Carcedo, who's the old assistant to Unai Emery. They've got a lot of Russian money going into them as well, so they've been able to sign some interesting players. You know, you look at the teams they've knocked out in the qualifiers. They knocked out Dynamo Kiev, Red Star Belgrade as well, who are always pretty tough at this level. So I look at those. I think that's not easy for Chelsea, any of those. It's a big step up from where they were last season.
Yeah, I'm again, Barcelona, I think, are right up there. I really do. Bayern Munich as well, and that's away from home. In terms of my old club, Benfica, and Atalanta as well, throw in Ajax. They're the ones where you'd hope to pick up points, maybe even 3 points. But how difficult will they be, those three?
Well, I think you look, Scott, at Benfica, of course, knocking Jose Mourinho's Fenerbahce out last night. It was only 1-0, but in reality, they absolutely hammered them.
Scored 2 extra, didn't they? But they were disallowed.
Yeah, and Fenerbahce had 1 shot on target. Bear in mind, they've spent a lot on players again this summer. They've got John Duran. They're paying all his Saudi wages. So we're not talking about a small budget little team here. And Benfica made them look really ordinary. And Benfica have got, I think, a few more signings to go before deadline as well. They're looking to bring in Mohamed Amoura from Wolfsburg. So look, Benfica are always front foot. They're always exciting. We've seen them play good games against Chelsea in the past as well. Atalanta, I think, is interesting because, of course, they've lost Retegui, their top scorer. He went to Saudi, but then Scamacca came back at the weekend and scored his first goal in a really long time. They've got other big players who are coming back as well. Again, they've got the Ademola Lookman problem to solve. It looks like he's going to have to stay there. He's a little bit further down the line than Alex Isak is. And, you know, the suitors for him have gone away. He didn't really have any Premier League suitors, which I find unbelievable for the African Footballer of the Year. He's a terrific player and not the player that we last saw in the Premier League. He's far better than that. It's quite an ordinary Ajax side, which I think Chelsea should have the measure of. But, yeah, it's a tough enough group, I would say.
Just to bring you up to date with some scores this evening, Europa League qualifier, Aberdeen down to 10 men. Jensen sent off for 2 yellow cards. They trail FCSB by 1-0, 3-2 on aggregate. They trail now. And Hibernian trail Legia Warsaw by 1-0 on the night, now 3-1 on aggregate. The other games still goalless apart from Shelburne, who are now 5-1 up on aggregate against Linfield of Northern Ireland. I'll bring you the latest on those very shortly. But that was the big preview. Thanks to Ladbrokes. It's 18+, gambleaware.org.
The big preview on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. You build it. We give you a totally free bet this week and a big boost every day. That's Ladisfaction. 18+, gambleaware.org.
Right, up next, we'll get Andy's thoughts on the draws for Manchester City and Liverpool. Stay with us. You're listening to Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. I'm Hugh Woozencroft, alongside former Chelsea defender Scott Minto, and we're joined by European football expert Andy Brassell to react to today's Champions League draw. Let's move on to Liverpool and Manchester City. In fact, we'll talk Liverpool. The big story is going to be the return of Trent Alexander-Arnold to Anfield with Real Madrid, but they will also, Liverpool, go away to Inter Milan. They'll face Atleti at home, Frankfurt away, PSV at home, Marseille away, Karabakh at home, and Galatasaray away. Some tricky fixtures in there, some big teams to face as well. What do you make of Liverpool's draw?
We were talking about atmospheric away games. I don't think if you'd have handpicked them, you could have picked 4 more atmospheric away games. It's Inter at home is very underrated. Frankfurt away, deafening. And then you've got Marseille and Galatasaray, which absolutely speak for themselves. And, you know, if Liverpool want to finish top 8, they're going to have to get, probably 6 points out of those 4 games. So I think how the fixtures fall and in which order they fall is really interesting. They could do with getting some points on the board early on, I think, to take a bit of the pressure off them in that case. Although, you know, you're talking, Scott, about them having a lot of new players, which I think is absolutely right. Maybe this is where the Champions League comes into its own. You know, maybe it's a bit of practice, maybe it's a bit of chance to work together and build up for the next stage, because of course Liverpool were fantastic. They were the best team in the league stage of the Champions League last season, and then they draw a really good PSG, and it's all over all of a sudden. So really, I think probably a lot of Liverpool fans will be looking at it and thinking, what actually is the advantage? It's like finishing really high up in this table, you know, because on their day, they will feel as if they can beat anyone in this competition anyway, and anyone in this run of fixtures as well. But I think the way the fixtures fall for all of these, and we'll find out on Saturday, as we said, really does matter. Because, like, if you play Atletico now, if that's the first game, I think Liverpool beat them, and Liverpool beat them with comfort. If they're playing them in November, like, maybe they're a bit more together. Maybe they know what they're doing as well, because they're in a similar position as we were talking about before. And again, I think it's a question with Marseille. There's a bit of turnover. Obviously, it remains to be seen if Adrien Rabiot actually does go. They're extending a sort of half an olive branch to it, maybe an olive twig to him in the last couple of hours as well. The president has said his door's always open to him, so we'll see if he goes or not. And then you've got Galatasaray, and if you catch them on a good night, I mean, I don't think you're leaving there with anything. I think Galatasaray are going to give a few teams bloody noses. You know, bear in mind that they've got a front two of Osimhen and Icardi when he's fully fit. Zaniolo is probably going to stay as well. We don't know if, like, they might end up with Edison in goal. You know, bear in mind that obviously they have to get it all signed off by the Champions League deadline, which is earlier than the Turkish transfer deadline, which is September 12th. But they've got a while to work on this squad yet, and they will do.
In terms of Trent, how's he seen to have settled in at Real Madrid? I covered his first couple of games on the Club World Cup for talkSPORT. Steady performances without being brilliant, but obviously he's learnt the language, which would be one of the first things I would advise anyone to try and do, it just to get a bit of respect that you're respecting someone's culture and language. But on the pitch, how's he seem to be doing?
It's an okay start. Obviously, a lot of fuss has been made here about the fact that he didn't start away at Oviedo at the weekend, and you know there have even been rumours that he might look elsewhere. But you know, I think it's way too early for that. I think it's quite sensible from Xabi Alonso to maybe spare him an away game at somewhere quite hostile early on. You know, the fact is they've got Dani Carvajal back, who's got loads of experience. I think they really have to bleed Trent in slowly. I think that's the sensible thing to do. And again, it was a steady first performance against Osasuna. I guess the advantage that Xabi Alonso has got is he's got 2 very different right backs, because Carvajal is really battling, known for the defensive side of the game, whereas Trent Alexander-Arnold can make them a load more expansive. Now, the other question is whether medium term they decide to go with 3 at the back, because, of course, we know that Trent Alexander-Arnold is very, very attacking, but that's always been in a back 4. If he's a wing back, that's different. You know, I think when he's a bit deeper, it gives him the chance to play those great diagonals, to burst from deep. If he's a little bit further up the pitch, I think that causes another rethink of how he's going to play. So it'd be interesting to see how that that pans out. But look, it's way premature for people to say, oh, well, he hasn't really settled there or anything like that. Look, we'll wait and see. We know there's enormous pressure at Real Madrid, and he's not the only player who has to settle in there.
Little tight hamstring when the Liverpool game comes around.
No.
What kind of reception do you think he'll get there?
I think from the Anfield crowd will get a good reception. You know, the crowd and social media are two totally different things. I think he's shown enough character in his career that he won't have a cheeky little injury. If selected, he'll definitely play, and it will be interesting to see, because it probably would be a defensive performance they'd have to put in. So maybe Danny Carvajal would be a better option in that particular instance. But no, I think the Anfield crowd, especially if Liverpool have started the season well, then they should respect what he's done. And they even got a bit of money for him as well.
We'll see.
You don't agree,
I'm
clearly.
not too sure about that. Let's very quickly touch on Manchester City. Sorry, it will be very quickly once again. Manchester City at home to Borussia Dortmund, away at Real Madrid. Should be a good one. Leverkusen at home, Villarreal away, Napoli at home, Bodo Glimt of Norway away, Galatasaray at home, and Monaco away.
So obviously I'm looking straight away at Bodo Glimt, because them being in the Champions League for the first time, they have made mugs of some very big clubs at home in the last couple of years.
Another three at the back team that actually plays good football.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Kjetil Knutsen, we always say, he's going to turn up and manage Brighton at some point. He never does. But look, he's so happy there. They've done a brilliant job over the last 5 or 6 years. And it'll be interesting to see how they deal with the step up, because I think they looked so below the standard of Spurs when you got to the semi-final last year. So I don't know, it does suggest to me that it might be a bit of a step up for them. But having said that, Manchester City are in this strange place at the moment, whereas when they look, we saw it during the Club World Cup, when they look good with the new guys, they look really good. And then all of a sudden, they just leave you a bit hungry and wanting more. So whether they're a serious contender for this title, I don't think we can know yet. I think we'll find out a little bit about them in the group stage. I mean, they've got to make a better job of this season's group stage than they did of last season. Yeah. But I think they've got tougher fixtures. And Bodo Glimt, I think, will fancy that. If you look at the teams that could get a bloody nose up there, you look, Spurs have been there and done it, so you think they should have it cover off. But really, the ones you're looking at, Juventus are going there and City are going there. I think they take a point off one of them, at least.
I couldn't agree more. And it's interesting you sort of said that of all the teams, and we've touched on some of them, but I've covered Bodo Glimt a couple of times. Completely different team at home, away from home. Different pitch, of course, as well, with it being like the 4G. You wouldn't want to play them in December. You'd rather play them early on. So that's going to be a fascinating one to see when the dates come out.
I think the interesting thing about all those teams that they've got, and of course Leverkusen are in a state of reconstruction at the moment. We'll see what they look like by the end of Monday. And obviously Erik ten Hag, I'm sure, would like to come back to Manchester and put on some sort of performance. They had a very poor start to the season at the weekend against Hoffenheim. But all of those teams, I think you look at Galatasaray, who we talked about, Napoli and their signings at Dortmund, all these teams, Monaco to a lesser extent, all of these teams are going to want to have a go at City. And City have looked a little bit vulnerable. Even if you go back to the Club World Cup and you look at Al Ahly and the way they went out, City can be vulnerable. And, until they prove otherwise, I think we're right to question them.
I think these 2 seasons are about getting the most out of Pep Guardiola that they can before he leaves, bringing in new faces, as many as they can, and trying to have him rub off on those players and turn them into world-class stars that they've obviously had previously at Manchester City. I think it's a transitional season, if you know what I mean. I don't think they're going to be a poor side. They might be second or third in the Premier League in a transitional season, but I don't think, especially in the Champions League, we're going to see a Manchester City team that's there or thereabouts when we're talking about winners.
It's a cup competition. I think they can. I'd fancy them more for the Champions League than the Premier League at this moment.
I would agree with that.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that.
Individuals tend to trump teams, don't they, in the Champions League?
We got more to talk about. Andy Brassell, Scott Minto alongside me. Newcastle and Spurs fans. We'll talk about your fixtures straight after this. You're listening to Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. It's 18+, gambleaware.org.
when was the last time you saw someone score with a knuckleball free kick? We're going to take a look at why we're not seeing them anymore and explain a bit about how they work. The knuckleball peaked in the 2010s after that Ronaldo strike against Portsmouth in 2008 inspired academy players everywhere. Here's a young Mason Mount.
I tried to base my free kick on Ronaldo, hit the ball by the valve and it moves. So what do you do? Top corner.
Now, no ball is perfectly aerodynamic, so as it travels it creates ever-changing pockets of turbulent air, causing that unpredictable movement. Football's most prolific free-kick taker, Juninho Pernambucano, perfected the technique but didn't invent it. He was inspired by players from the 90s.
You're listening to Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. Hugh, Woozencroft, Scott Minto, former Chelsea FA Cup winner, with you, as is our European football expert, Andy Brassell. The draw made for the Champions League a little bit earlier on today. And usually, actually, with this new format of the league phase, I think, well, the draw's not that important because you're obviously not head-to-head against all your opponents. You are in the grand scheme of things, but there's obviously 36 teams in a league. So if you lose to one of your opponents, it's not the be-all and end-all, as we saw in Man City last year, who were actually pretty poor. However, looking at the fixtures as we have been so far, I think it could be tricky for some of the big clubs in the Premier League during this European campaign. So very important fixtures, a few tough draws. What do we make of Newcastle and Tottenham's? Well, Newcastle face Barcelona at home. I immediately think of Bobby Robson there, and just evoking so many...
Bastina Spria, yeah.
Just immediately.
Rob Lee's told me some stories about him.
What a game. Barcelona coming to St James's Park. I don't care what happens in the group phase. That's going to be an unbelievable night. But they're also away at Paris Saint-Germain. They'll face Benfica at home, away at Leverkusen, at home to PSV Eindhoven, Marseille away for Newcastle. Athletic Club will come to St James's, and Union Saint-Gilloise away from home as well. Eddie Howe's side obviously not had the best summer. They've had a good summer in terms of recruitment, but obviously the saga regarding Alexander Isak hasn't been ideal. If you're just joining us, they have agreed a deal for Nick Woltemade from Stuttgart, big young German centre forward who could be a big improvement in their, well, not a big improvement, but a big addition to their squad. What do you make of the fixtures so far?
I think Newcastle have got the hardest draw of any of the English teams. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think from a supporter's perspective, you look at it and you think there are some lovely, easy little away trips for us. And, you know, they'll be supported really well. Of course, they've got the history with, I think you think back to the Drogba versus Woodgate games. You look at... the 2004 UEFA Cup semi-final against Marseille, and Drogba was absolutely walking on water, of course, just before he joined Chelsea. Didn't face Woodgate in the second game, which maybe made the difference in that and stopped Newcastle getting to the final. But there is a lot of historical resonance in this, and more recently, of course, the fact that they played PSG away last time at the Parc des Princes and should have beaten them, and basically got that awful decision, the penalty decision, right at the end. And it's interesting, I think, that both Tottenham and Newcastle have to go to face PSG away, because PSG are the best team in Europe. I don't think there's any way around that, but they have had no pre-season. They played 0 pre-season games because they didn't have time to. They played every single game it was possible for them to play last season, because, of course, they played for the playoff round because they started really badly in the Champions League. We can forget that because it was such a long season. They started training. Week later, play the Super Cup. And the 2 league games they've played so far, they've gone past Angers and Nantes 1-0 on both occasions. And, you know, if your team's knackered, really, and you've got 6 points and 2 clean sheets, you're not arguing. But against teams that are much weaker than them, it just feels as if they're playing their pre-season in actual league games. Yeah. And I guess you look at that lack of preparation, however good they are, maybe that affects them later on. So maybe, and, you know, I think we've seen it before with, I don't know if it was in your day, Scott, but when West Ham were in the Intertoto and they got into Europe that way.
That team,
I mean, you hit a wall in what, October, November?
Well, I got injured.
That's one heck of a wall.
That was a tournament, and the first round was our first pre-season game.
Yeah,
we may have had a practice game at the training ground, but it was almost, Harry did it actually really well. But yeah, you know, a part of us felt like by the time August came around, we'd had 3 months of the season gone already. I do feel, though, that PSG almost showed the way last season about a team that can develop throughout the season and also... Peak later. Yeah. Exactly. So the fact that they can boss that league, the fact that they can, when they're probably 60-70%, still keep a clean sheet and win games in their league. I think last season there was a stat where there was only one player who started more than 24 league games. So he really can rotate while still winning that league. I feel much more confident about them than I obviously want the proper Club World Cup champions to do really well. But I think they can be Chelsea affected later on in the season. So I think what PSG showed last season, I still feel they're right up there, even if they don't start this season well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I want to know is, like, I would like to see them spend the Donnarumma money on the squad, because I just think maybe a player or two extra is going to help them when they get into the guts of it. So when they get to just before Christmas or just after Christmas, I think that's going to really help them, that rotation, because a couple of injuries, which especially muscle injuries, are likely to happen rather than possible to happen, I think you can say, because they simply haven't had a break. And I don't care how young and athletic the players are, you know, they've got to be in the red zone, especially as you get towards Christmas. I think they've got to be careful about that. And as you said before, the best team doesn't always win this. I think if you're Newcastle, though, you look at that and you think, these are all really mouth-watering games. And yet, we can still get top 24. I'd be surprised if they didn't get top 24.
I hope Newcastle get PSG away pretty soon while they're undercooked.
Yes.
We'll see.
Yes.
Tottenham, the same. They will be away against Paris Saint-Germain, as we mentioned, but they'll also be at home to Dortmund and Villarreal. Away at Frankfurt, Bodo Glimt and Monaco. Home games against Slavia Prague and Copenhagen as well.
I mean, you're super happy with that. If you're Spurs, I think out of all of those, apart from PSG, I would argue Eintracht Frankfurt are the most dangerous. We've seen how good they are at developing players in recent years and selling big players. They're developing another two at the moment, a 19 and 20-year-old who are running their team in John Uzun and Jean-Matteo Boya, who started the season really well. They're exciting to watch. They've got a good coach in Dino Topmola, who obviously did his sad eyes and went, oh, Hugo Ekitike is irreplaceable, knowing all along that he isn't, that they've got the next 100 million player lined up already. And as we said, they're very, very good at home as well. I thought they were good against Tottenham, particularly at Spurs in the Europa League last season, and that they show signs of improving from there. But other than PSG, I think you look at that, if you're Spurs, and they're pretty happy. You know, they've got the measure of Bodo Glimt, Copenhagen, that they got through last night, of course, against Basel in the playoff. They've just lost their best player, Victor Froholt, who's a brilliant midfield player, 19 years old. He's gone to Porto, so he won't even be playing in this competition. He'll be playing in the Europa League. So, yeah, if you're Spurs, I think you're happy, and you can stagger your efforts, which is what everyone's looking to do. I guess if I'm Spurs, I'm thinking, let's trouser 15 points as soon as possible, make sure we're in that top 8, and then let's rest players for the last couple of games.
Okay, Andy Brassell, thank you so much for being with us, running the rule over the draw today in the Champions League. Back with Trans Europe Express Sunday night?
Yeah, slightly later, 10 p.m. on Sunday night.
Okay, all right.
It's a great listen.
Thank you very much indeed. It is, and I always feel like I should call you Andy Brassell because of
Danny, yeah.
That's only on Sunday nights when we're being European.
I'm always like, am I an idiot? Well, why can't I say it correctly? But there you go. Andy Brassell with us this evening. There you go. I said it. On the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes, it's 18+, begambleaware.org. We're going to talk Rangers under Russell Martin. Is he under pressure already? That's next. 03717 223344. You're listening to Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. Hugh, Woozencroft and Chelsea FA Cup winner Scott Minto are with you. Right, let's talk Rangers. A lot of people have wanted to talk Rangers today. Humiliated last night in the Champions League qualifiers by Club Brugge, losing 6-0 on the night, 9-1 on aggregate and falling into the Europa League in the process. Some fans already calling into question the appointment of Russell Martin as the club's head coach this summer. They've also made a poor start to the season domestically. They've drawn all 3 league games so far. And should they lose to Celtic in the Old Firm in the Scottish Premiership at the weekend, they will be 9 points behind the champions after just 4 games. Well, giving his reaction to defeat last night, former Rangers midfielder Charlie Adam told talkSPORT there has to be major consequences.
It was an embarrassment, really, and there has to be consequences, really, from the back. And the end of this is that, you know, it's okay. You can get beat, but there's a way of getting beat. Yeah. And you know, you've got to have a wee bit of a desire and a hunger to yourself and a bit of pride for the football club to go and put your body on the line to stop goals, to get a grip of somebody that's no tracking back or whatever. There needs to be leadership in there, because at the moment that could be that could be double figures, and that'll be an embarrassment for Rangers Football Club.
So, is it fair to question Russell Martin already? Some of the reaction, I think, has been a little bit over the top, I have to say. I get it. Rangers have been way off it. They should be much better. They should be more competitive. They should be winning the games that they've drawn in the Scottish Premiership so far. Absolutely. So I understand from a results and performances perspective that it should be better. This is not me excusing any of what has gone already, but it is incredibly early days for Russell Martin at Rangers. A host of new signings, obviously. No real chance for those people to bed in the team. Obviously, he's been brought in for a certain style of football. I don't think any of us would describe him as a defensive manager. But what I'd say about his career so far is at virtually every team he's been at, they've struggled defensively in the early stages. Whatever he's asked his teams to do, it has taken the players time to get their heads around it. They have, though, emerged with a much better style of football, conducive to getting themselves up the league. It has taken a little bit of time everywhere. I don't think he's a different manager to the one he's been anywhere else in his career. So for me, the message is to the Rangers fans, give him some time. I get it. So many of you are angry about last night. 6-0, 9-1 in aggregate is way off where Rangers should be. So I'm with you on that one. But that's not to say that he can't be a good manager for Rangers in the long term. He hasn't made, quite clearly, he hasn't made an immediate impact at the club, but he can still make an impact at that club. I've seen closely what he did at Southampton. It was a club with no confidence, and he actually built a huge togetherness. Fan base, players, club, they loved him. They started climbing up the league. He managed to get them to the Premier League. How are they going to bridge the gap, Rangers, with Celtic? And that's the question that I want to ask Rangers fans, truly. It doesn't matter whether Russell Martin is the manager or not. I've heard fans complaining about the recruitment. So if you're telling me the recruitment's been terrible, but Russell Martin has to work with those players, what more do you expect from him if he's going to bridge that gap? For me, it's always going to be style of football. Rangers, the difference between them and Celtic over the last few years for me has been obviously money, we get it, but on the pitch, in the Scottish Premiership, the style of football that Rangers have played just doesn't match what Celtic have produced in an attacking sense.
Look, I understand what you're saying, and clearly the style of football, I think most football fans want to see a nice, in inverted commas, style of football, but they want to see, by a million miles more, winning football. Yeah. You only get one chance at a first impression. I think it's fair to say it's not happened for him. And look, where you're right in terms of recruitment, and as much as the Rangers fans don't want to hear this, they're still absolutely playing catch up in terms of the finances of what's happened over the last decade plus. But this is Rangers Football Club. This is Glasgow Rangers. This is, I mean, those two clubs are two of the biggest in the world. They're just in a really small league. And the bottom line is what they cannot afford to do, what he cannot afford to do, is to be 9 points. They've got Hearts after that, by the way. So that's not going to be an easy game as well. The title's over come September. Panathinaikos, Victoria Pilsen got through them. Club Brugge, really, realistically, was never going to get through them. But 9-1 in aggregate again is not good enough. Yeah. Now, for Max Aarons to get sent off in what was a
Crazy.
A crazy sending off. And look, I've been in that position before where perhaps you've got the wrong side of the winger, but you have to let him go. You can't, pull his shirt and be down to 10 men when you're already 1-0 down. And let's be fair, Club Brugge, they declared a 6. If they needed to get more, they would have got more. There's a big problem there. I understand what you're saying, and I am with you because he needs to be given time. There's no point in bringing him in and saying straight away, you've got to go within a couple of months. He needs to be given time. But how much say did he have in the recruitment? That's the only thing, the question I would ask.
The thing is, we're sitting here as if all the transfers have failed. They've played a handful of games.
Exactly, and it needs
so
time.
We don't know if that recruitment has been that bad until we see how those players progress.
But this is where, and to be fair to him, he has said it's about trying to enjoy the football. And by that, he means handle the pressure at playing for one of the biggest clubs in the world. Because I don't care what size of the league you're in, every time you pull on that Rangers shirt, the crowd is so passionate that if you're not character-wise, and you could liken it to Manchester United as well in terms of the pressure when you put on that shirt, they have to win every single game. Whether that's realistic or not, they have to be able to handle that. And it looks to me as if they're not able to handle the weight of the Rangers shirt. And that's what Russell needs to sort out first and foremost. And with all due respect, the style of football, get winning football first, and then you develop the style of football.
He does need to win games, obviously, in the very, very short term, and winning an Old Firm would go a long, long way to help.
It's a massive game. Do you know what? For both clubs, more so for Rangers, but for both clubs.
Defensively, they need to be better. That is a true. I was watching the game last night, and as you mentioned, Club Brugge getting chances at will. I get it. Rangers had a player less, and they're obviously chasing a result. 6-0, 1-0, whatever it was, it wouldn't have made a difference. They wanted to go through. They needed goals to catch up, but the quality of the defending was just nowhere near it where it needed to be, even if you wanted to come from behind and turn that tie in a miracle result. The point, though, is coming into this season, we cannot forget where Rangers have been.
Yeah.
That, for me, is the big thing.
Totally agree.
It's a bit like my club, Manchester United, where I hear people talking about Manchester United need to definitely finish in Europe and they can be top 6 this season. I'm like, have you forgotten how bad they were?
Yeah. Forget the name. Look at
and there is an element of me that thinks, wow, Rangers must have been amazing before Russell Martin showed up. Yeah. The way that the fans are reacting, because this must have been a team that was beating teams at They had some terrible results last year under Barry Ferguson, under Philippe Clement before that. This is a squad that has been struggling. This is a club that has been struggling. So within 10 games, Russell Martin hasn't turned that around and made them a brilliant team. And it's like he's got to go. That's what I find strange. If they were winning trebles and he'd put these results out, I would be hugely concerned. But this is a club that has been devoid of the confidence that it needs to be going into the Champions League and the confidence that it needs to be going out there winning every week in the Scottish Premiership, especially when you've got a manager who's overhauling the style and who's brought in a number of new faces. Yeah. If you thought Rangers were going to be going into the Champions League group stage and you were confident of that happening, you're a lot braver than me, certainly.
Well,
if you thought they were going to win the Scottish Premiership this season, I think I'd be concerned for you as well, because that wasn't going to happen. The point is, can he make such a strong campaign this year that it's something they can build on for next year when they could possibly go for the title? Because you can turn things around within 2 years in Scotland.
You can't be thinking about next season when we're this early in this season.
No, but I'm talking about. I'm asking you, what is his role? What does he have to deliver in his first season at Rangers? You tell me.
Look, I mean, what does he have to deliver? Well, the fans obviously want the title. It's all about the title first and foremost. He's not going to win the title.
Second, he's not going to, and they're 5 points behind. He's obviously not going to lose his job, is he? So
he shouldn't if they're 5 points behind, because I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, look, the bigger picture of all of this is that Rangers are still trying to play catch up. But you try telling that to the Rangers fans who turn up. They don't want to see three. They don't want to see 3 draws in the first 3 games. They want to at least. So look, we are where we are. Now we're going to turn it round. This might be the perfect game. It might be the worst possible game if they get hammered again. But actually, if they win this game, you can turn around and say, this is where our season starts. This is where the confidence comes. This is where you start enjoying it. But it's such a balance there. And this is why the managers and the players earn what they earn. They have to be able to deal with the pressure.
For me, this weekend in the Old Firm, even if Rangers are to lose it, this is about understanding what the Old Firm is. Because if you as a Rangers manager can't motivate a team to show the Rangers fans exactly what the Old Firm game means.
It's not about motivation.
But I'm sorry.
You're already motivated.
They haven't shown in their other games the fight and desire that's required to wear a Rangers shirt. In this game,
trust me, they will.
If they go out this weekend and they do the same that they've done in their other Scottish Premiership matches in terms of fight and hunger and desire, then he probably should be sacked.
If they haven't shown even in the other games, then something's wrong. And that's where Russell is saying, look, try and enjoy it. And by that, he means try and play without fear. It looks like they're playing with fear at the moment. And actually, you could argue that actually they'll play with even more fear because it's Celtic up next. Or they just absolutely rise to the occasion, match them, tackle for tackle, and then somehow nick a win. It doesn't matter about good football. My worry is that if he is trying to play good football and suddenly Celtic nick the ball off them and they score a couple of goals off the back of it, then his style of play, which will come down to him, he'll be criticised for that.
He can't try and be expansive.
No, he can't.
This weekend, can he?
He can't.
They're
That's
just
my
not
point.
playing confident football at the moment. That would be silly.
And this is where he said he's learnt from what he said from his Southampton days. And this is what we've been saying about Ruben Amorim and why I want to give Thomas Frank a lot of credit, because he's adaptable from game to game. You don't have to lose your DNA in terms of what you want to do, but in terms of tactics, each game brings different problems, and you have to show that adaptability. He has to show that this weekend.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation because I think he's the kind of manager that wants spirit and togetherness from fans, from the club, clearly. Over his position as manager, there's a bit of division at Rangers at the moment. Certainly, the players won't be enjoying their football the way things went last night and how they've been going in the Scottish Premiership. So he's got a job to do in terms of putting smiles on faces, that's for sure. Like I said, if he can win an Old Firm, it goes a long way to changing the mood.
He's got to say this is the perfect game.
Exactly.
He's got to say this is the perfect game for them.
Don't forget, Rangers are going to be in the draw for the Europa League tomorrow. Celtic will be as well. We're going to have all the details from midday tomorrow. Of course, Nottingham Forest, Aston Villa, the English clubs involved in that. And we'll have Crystal Palace finding out their opponents in the Conference League draw straight after that as well. All tomorrow from midday here on talkSPORT. In the next hour, we're going to refocus on the latest transfer news. We'll discuss Alejandro Garnacho's move to Chelsea with talkSPORT's transfer guru, Ben Jacobs. You're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. It's 18+, begambleaware.org.
Tyson Fury, Floyd Mayweather, Canelo Alvarez. Just hearing these names makes you think money and the hundreds of millions of dollars, pounds or Saudi riyals in boxing. But that's at the top. At the bottom, it isn't quite the same. Even for those on the rise, there's not an awful lot of cash in the boxing world. And if you're just starting out, well, it can be a very costly exercise indeed. But don't take my word for it. Here's the former European champion talkSPORT's Spencer Oliver.
You're turning professional and you're boxing, let's say, York Hall on a non-televised fight. You have to sell tickets to earn any money, but you have to cover the wages of your opponent as well. So if you don't have the ability to be able to sell enough tickets, you effectively have to pay to fight.
A far cry then from Jake Paul facing Mike Tyson in 2024, when the purse was reported to be around £48 million. But the vast amounts of cash lining the top dog's pockets isn't the norm in a typical fight.
Let's say you're lucky and you get between 5 and 10 grand. You're going to get 10 grand max for that. 10% goes to the trainer, 25% goes to the manager. Then we've got the tax man to pay as well. So we're cutting that money in at least half. So now you've got 5 grand for a 10-week camp. So you're talking about a guy here earning, he might be clearing 500 quid a week. How do you support a family on that? So boxers chase the dream. And, you know, there's probably 2% of them that actually make it.
So say you do make it and you start to rise up the ranks. Strikers Boxing, a training academy, says the mid-tier fighters can earn more, somewhere between £10,000 and £50,000 a fight, depending on record, profile, opponent and popularity of weight class. It's only at the top level does the real cash start flowing in, with the top-tier professionals, i.e. those going for titles, earning 6 figures a fight. Something else you'll have heard of is the terms prize fighter or journeyman. A prize fighter is, as it sounds, someone who picks up fights where they can and gets a nice big check if they win. Journeymen are the fighters who take on up-and-comers, effectively used for experience in the ring. Even if they're going up against the real prospects, a young Anthony Joshua, for example, these guys will be lucky to earn more than 10 grand. So the average boxer isn't as rich as you'd think.
You're listening to the Transfer Insiders with me, Hugh Woozencroft, and the former Chelsea and West Ham defender Scott Minto. This hour we're going to discuss Brits abroad. Trent Alexander-Arnold heading back to Liverpool in the Champions League. What kind of reception will he get? 03717 223344. We'll also discuss Alejandro Garnacho's move to Chelsea. Good for Manchester United. Is it good for the Blues, though? Chelsea fans, let us know what you think about your latest addition. We'll be joined by Ben Jacobs very shortly with the latest transfer news as well. If you want to get in touch, give us a call. 03717 223344. This is the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. Right, before we speak to talkSPORT's transfer expert Ben Jacobs, let's speak to a Rangers fan, David, who's given us a call this evening. Good evening, David. What would you like to say?
Hi, David.
How's it going, boys? I was listening earlier on and you're talking about Rangers, and I think usually I'd agree with you making good points when you say only 10 games and he's trying to change things and the past hasn't been great. I get all that, right? But we've regressed for last season. We're going back to the way for last season. It's horrible to watch. It's boring to watch. 8 players came in and has watched the other night, and not one of them's good enough, right? So it might only be 10 games, but there's nothing there. I've been going since I was 7-year-old. I'm 51, right? And I have never in my life sat and watched the Rangers team and thought there's nothing there. There's nothing. And we'll no win on Sunday either.
No, that's unlikely, given the form. I get it, but it is a big derby match, as you know, and things can go out the window, and especially when it comes to tactics and style of football. You know, it can be an arm wrestle, that fixture. I'm sure you know it well. So keep the positivity for that one. The players certainly need you on their side. I want to come back to the transfers. What level of player, you said these guys aren't good enough, what level of player do you think is appropriate for Rangers right now? And let's be real, do Rangers have the money to bring those players in?
Well, we've spent money, right? So we have spent money. I mean, you're talking about $3.5 million on a guy, Asgard. Now, I'm going to give him a break because he's not played a lot of football, right? But for what I am seeing, he doesn't even look like a football player the last couple of games he's been involved in, right? But as I said, I'll give him a break with that one up to now. But I'm not looking for us to spend multi-million pounds. But you can spend that kind of money and get better than what we've got. I mean, the guy's having to go back to last season's players that he's trying not to play in the team, i.e. Raskin, Diomande, Tav, and he's having to bring them on because the ones he's brought in are completely failing. They don't even look like a football team. They don't look like guys that are enjoying football. They don't even look as though they're enjoying it. I'm sitting in the stand watching them, and I don't know if they don't get it, they don't want to get it, I don't know what it is, right? But it's not happening, it's not working. It's not for them at all. And in his style of play, it seems he refuses to change. Now, if you've got players there and it doesn't work, you need to try something different. It doesn't. To me, his ego's massive and he just doesn't want to change. And he thinks it's going to work. It's not going to work. And I tell you what, I've never known a manager that not one Rangers fan wants him there. And that goes back to Kilmon, goes back to even Michael Beale. Some people stuck up for him. Nobody's sticking up for this guy. Nobody wants him.
Why is that, David?
I think
because there's a lot. Most of them didn't want him in the first place. So it seemed to me.
Well, I did.
Go on.
I did want him, and this is what I keep hearing. Most of them didn't want him. That's not really true. There was a group that didn't want him, yeah. But see, even the ones that did want to give him a chance, that did actually want him. I'm watching it. We were even winning in the. I remember it was in the last round. They put the team out there, Ibrox. I didn't even think we were great in that game. The other team were rotten. And I'm watching it. It's so slow. It's boring. I mean, I listened to him when he came in and said he'd learned from his mistakes at Southampton. It was going to be aggressive. It was going to be... I don't know what he's talking about, but anything he's talking about, it's not what we're playing.
But did you expect the finished article already in terms of his tactics, in terms of...
I didn't even think we'd have won the league this year, mate. I didn't think we'd win the league this year. But I want to see progression. And I'll tell you what, we went back the way.
So what would you, if you were part of the board now, what would you do?
Well, he'd be away. He would have been there.
So you get rid of the manager who you did want just a couple of months ago?
100%, because I feel as though what he said and what he's doing and what he's given us is two different things.
Okay.
Who would come in for you?
Completely chalk and cheese. Who would come in?
Yeah.
I think genuinely, and I think, and it's an easy thing for me to say, I would go back and I would bring Barry in and I'd give him a season. Barry Ferguson, Neil McCann, Billy Dodds, bring them back in again. I know they weren't.
Did you want Barry Ferguson to stay when he was there previously?
I wasn't. If he'd stayed, I'd have been okay, and if he didn't, I'd have been okay. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
I was like, well, new regime, 49ers, new guys coming in. You let them bring their guy in. I'm like, right, okay, that sounds good. Listen, Russell Martin, he sounds as though he's saying the right things. Mate, what he says and what he's doing is completely chalk and cheese. And then I don't know what his problem is with Tav. I don't know what his problem is with Raskin. But he's got some sort of problem with the boys that were there last year, and it's obvious because he's not playing them. But then he keeps bringing them on to try and save games because his players aren't doing well enough, and then he praises them, then he leaves them out the next week. Mate, it's just so confusing. The guy is unreal.
Yeah, when it comes to Tavernier and Raskin, there's a part of me that thinks, are they almost being ushered out of the club? Maybe the club thinks they'll get a decent amount of money for Raskin. Maybe Tavernier, who's been there for a long time and is a captain, of course, maybe his salary's quite high. Maybe they're thinking, with the turnover of player, maybe possibly we can get him out of the club. I'm not sure.
You need characters, though.
You absolutely do. I personally wouldn't get rid of him, but I'm trying to explain why he possibly might be leaving him out, because it is kind of inexplicable.
He should be asked the question then. I'm sure. Yeah. I'm sure he probably is, but I haven't heard it yet. But I go back to the fact that it's such a big club that you need characters first of all, and if you haven't got that, and you're being asked to play a certain style of football that they're not comfortable with, that makes things very difficult for the players.
Yeah, the thing about it is, for a lot of these signings as well, they haven't played for a club as big as Rangers. It's a complete change of mindset for some of those players. We've seen them in the EFL. I've seen a lot of these players in the EFL. They're good enough to play for Rangers. I don't see them as all Champions League players. I'm not saying that. but I'm saying they should be playing better than they have played in a Rangers shirt already. They are better players than what they've shown, which is kind of one of the reasons that I lean towards give the manager time and that these signings may well work out, because a lot of them, I've seen them play better than what they've done. And bear in mind, they've just arrived at the football club.
Yeah, they have. Absolutely. So, it's a massive club, and suddenly it's hit them, the pressure, the psychological side of it. And then it's a question of, do you sink or do you swim?
Yeah. And the manager too, Russell Martin.
Absolutely.
So let's see. If he gets hammered by Celtic at the weekend, I don't expect him to be there on Monday morning. So it's a massive game
I hope that
for him very early on. A couple of big games for Scottish teams this evening to bring you up to date with us. 81 minutes on the clock. Doesn't look like Aberdeen are going to be making it through to the Europa League proper this year. 3-0 down to FCSB of Romania at 5-2 down on aggregate. A big goal just went in for Hibernian. 55 minutes played for them away at Legia Warsaw. They were 3-1 down on aggregate. They've pulled that back to 3-2 with over half an hour to go in that one. Shelburne lead at Linfield by 2-0. They're 5-1 up on aggregate in that game. Shamrock Rovers are goalless against Santa Clara on the night. They do lead 2-1 on aggregate in that game. Remember earlier on, Crystal Palace made it through to the Conference League league phase as well, with a goalless draw away at Fredrikstad. Okay, plenty still to come on the Transfer Insiders. We'll get the latest on Alejandro Garnacho's move to Chelsea and news of an outgoing at Stamford Bridge too, with Ben Jacobs. That's coming up very, very shortly. You're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. It's 18+. BeGambleAware.org. You're listening to Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. Hugh Woozencroft alongside Chelsea FA Cup winner Scott Minto, and a massive goal for Hibs on the hour mark, just a few minutes after they pulled one back. They are now level 3-3 on aggregate with Legia Warsaw. That's amazing. The atmosphere at Legia is always very heated. They are leading on the hour mark away from home, and it is 3-3 on aggregate as they aim for a place in the Conference League proper. Still 3-0 down Aberdeen, and looking like they won't make it through to the Europa League proper. Gotta say, Super League action tonight on the hour mark should tell you Lee 34, Castleford 0. Right, in the latest episode of the talkSPORT Daily, Ollie Klink and the former Marseille and Nancy striker Tony Cascarino take a look at why more British footballers than ever before are choosing to play abroad. They examine how life off the pitch shapes their game, drawing on insights from Cascarino's time in France, from embracing new cultures and lifestyles to overcoming unique challenges. Now, Scott, we know you spent time abroad playing for Benfica in Portugal. Why do you think more players are looking to move abroad now?
It's not just more players, but younger as well. I mean, I look at some of the players that have gone out abroad and they're still in their teens. I couldn't have done that. I was mid-20s when I went to Benfica. I don't think I was emotionally mature enough to go abroad and try to learn a new language and a new culture and just live a different life. I have to say, Cascais on the Atlantic coast, 20 minutes from Lisbon was pretty good.
It helped.
It was like a holiday, I've got to be honest with you. But, you know, playing for a club like Benfica, where the first game of pre-season, there were 5,000 people turning up at the training ground. One pre-season game at the Stadio de Luz where there was 80,000 people, and you rolled out individually with the red carpet and announced. You know, it was incredible, but you know, I went into it off the back of winning the FA Cup with Chelsea. I felt confident enough to do that. A couple of years earlier, I probably wouldn't have been. So I think just generally in society, you know, more Brits are quite open to something different, to different challenges. And I respect everyone who does go out there, but even more so the ones who are still in their teens, because I certainly wouldn't have been able to do it.
I know you mentioned a few, you know, different things in terms of the things that you needed to pick up going there. What did you find toughest? Was it inside football? Was it outside football in terms of adjusting to life in a new country?
No, I'll be honest with you, I loved it all. I loved, because I've always liked going away on holiday. I loved Portugal, amazing country. I did find it difficult to learn the language because I tried really hard to learn it, and I definitely was pretty decent, more than decent. But you spend 30 seconds saying a few sentences, and then people just answer back fluent English. So I'm thinking, this could be easier in just doing it in English. But I was very determined to learn the language, and I think that's the biggest thing for me. And Trent clearly did it before he even went to Madrid, and I think you get a lot of respect by making it look like you're trying to integrate into their lifestyle, their culture. So that's the number one thing. One thing I also did, we went to pre-season to Holland and Brazil. And over there, I wrote down 50 things of what you would say in a match. Man on, drop off, he's behind you. You know, that type of thing. First touch, away. Just little things like that, which I think really, really help in a split-second decision that you have to make in a football match. And if you do it in English, it comes natural to you. If you don't know those words, then you could end up conceding a goal off the back of it. So I think that was very, very important as well. But I'll be honest with you, Hugh, I loved every second of it. Played Champions League in the second season. As I say, the lifestyle was amazing. The weather was amazing. The food was amazing. The people were incredibly passionate. Regularly 60 to 80,000 for every single home game, and 80,000 for the big games. So yeah, there was. Of course, you're testing yourself all the time, but just integrating. I think going away in pre-season with Holland and Brazil, having a few nights out with them as well with the lads, I think was really good to integrate myself. I wouldn't say I found nothing difficult, because all of it was difficult in a way, and especially on the pitch. But no, loved every second.
Okay, glad you did. I wonder if Trent Alexander-Arnold's enjoying every second at Real Madrid. Here's Cass's thoughts on Trent. He actually said he fears for him at Real Madrid. Have a listen.
It's a weird one with Trent, because he's been a boy club, that one of our own for most of his career, and he's joined Real Madrid at a very transitional time, manager-wise, player-wise, and they're a club that don't feel they're even close to one of the great Real Madrid teams. So ultimately, that if it doesn't go particularly well for him, then it's going to be a rough ride. So he's going at a very strange period for Real Madrid. So is he gifted enough? Of course he is. Trent's a fabulous talent. But it's going to be a massive challenge for him at Real Madrid, because Real Madrid isn't what it was years gone by, where your expectation is to win the league, Champions League, and you'd go deep and be one of the best sides in Europe without a doubt. They are not that at the moment. So that can fall back on Trent.
Yeah, big challenge. Really big challenge.
It's a huge challenge. Much bigger a challenge than, other players when Michael Ryan went there and Steve McManaman went. Of course it was, Beckham. It's difficult, but this period now is way tougher for him to be a success there than it was then.
Do you agree?
I would say it's going to be really, really tough for Trent in the sense that 2 seasons ago they were winning everything. Then last season they were a million miles off it. I don't necessarily agree that it's more difficult for Steve McManaman or David Beckham. They all had their issues. They all had the same pressures. They all had to go in there. And even if the team was doing really well, they had to show that they were worthy of a place. And we know that David Beckham at one point was put out and looked like he would never play another game, came back and helped them finally win the title. So I've got nothing but respect for both of those, even Michael Owen as well. If things are going well, you have to prove you're better than what they've already got. And if things aren't going well, which they're not really at the moment, or certainly not last season, then I would look at it as an opportunity to step in and be one of the new breed. The problem is Dani Carvajal is fit again, and he's a multiple Champions League and La Liga winner. And, listening to Andy, and I totally agree with him, not quite sure that it is going to be 3 at the back. And if it's not, then he's a direct rival for that place. And that could be very, very difficult, especially in the real big games. What I would say is Real Madrid mainly have the most possession. And where with Liverpool and with Madrid, you want Trent to come in and step in and show his world-class quality, which he clearly has. He is one of the most talented players, not just fullbacks, this country's ever produced.
Right, just to let you know, I should say that is all on the latest episode of talkSPORT Daily, which is available wherever you get your podcasts. I should let you know that Hibernian have scored again 3 goals in 11 second-half minutes. They've just had a player sent off, but they do lead the tie 4-3 on aggregate, trying to get themselves a place in the Conference League this season. I'll keep you posted with that one. But let's get more now on Transfer Insiders on Alejandro Garnacho's move to Chelsea and news of an outgoing at Stamford Bridge as well. Let's speak to talkSPORT's transfer guru, Ben Jacobs. Good evening, Ben.
Evening, guys. How are you?
Hi, Ben.
Finally, Alejandro Garnacho gets his wish on his way out of Manchester United to Chelsea. What do you make of the deal and what are the details?
Yes, so the fee is 40 million fixed and it suits all parties. There's a 10% sell-on as well. And Garnacho's agreed a 7-year deal. We reported for much of the window that Chelsea was starting at 25-30 million. Manchester United wanted 50 million. They've met halfway. Garnacho wanted the move. And I think for Manchester United, it suits them also to do a sale, both in terms of the player and Ruben Amorim not seeing eye to eye from a philosophical or football point of view, and the fact that this is pure profit on the books as well. So Garnacho will now formalise the move. It was never really in doubt, but interestingly, Chelsea choosing to complete Garnacho today after selling Christopher Nkunku to Milan for 42 million euros, whereas Xavi Simons, who maybe as a central player is more like for Nkunku, his future still has a big question mark over it, with Chelsea keen, but also Tottenham really pushing.
Nkunku to Milan. Hopefully he can be a success there and get his career restarted.
Yeah,
exactly. I've got to ask whether Manchester United are now going to go in and sign any players since they've sold Garnacho, and it looks like Rasmus Højlund could be going out the door as well.
Yeah, Rasmus Højlund to Napoli is really close. In fact, it's practically done on the club-to-club side for a package of £40 million. And that was Manchester United's asking price, as we revealed on talkSPORT. The formula is a loan with a conditional obligation. And my understanding is that conditional obligation, in other words, it's an option and then certain criteria get met and it becomes an obligation. And the specific criteria, I'm told, is Napoli qualifying for Champions League football. And then with that, plus Garnacho, Manchester United will feel from a PSR point of view, and heading into the new financial year, they'll be satisfied. Are they going to add any more? Well, I think yes on the goalkeeper front if possible. Sene Lammens, the Antwerp keeper, is the one they want. There's not a huge gulf in valuation there. 17 million Manchester United want to spend. Antwerp are hoping more for 20 million, and again a significant sell-on clause. And if Lammens arrives, I think Bayindir and Onana will both stay, with the logic that come January or even before, during the festive period, Onana goes off to the Africa Cup of Nations. So it actually helps Manchester United to have one extra goalkeeper. Midfield is quiet for now. Let's see what happens specifically with Kobbie Mainoo in the next few days. Naturally, if he was to depart, that's more pure profit on the books, and then Manchester United might look at a late window midfielder. But I'm told with the midfield it won't be a panic buy. So they wanted Carlos Baleba, they like Adam Wharton, Angelo Stiller is another player that's very high in their thinking. But if they can't get what's considered to be an elite and young striker, then Manchester United might wait and move for a midfielder next year.
And do you think Nicholas Jackson, just heading back to Chelsea for a second, is he expected to leave the club? Do you see him leaving soon?
Yeah, that is still my expectation. Bayern are the sort of front runners at this point, and I think from Chelsea's point of view, they might be prepared to sanction, particularly to a suitor abroad, a loan with an obligation. So that one is developing now, and the players already agreed a 5-year contract in case the clubs come to an agreement. But there are 4 other clubs as well. So Newcastle United we can discount now because of the fact that they've been able to bring in a fantastic signing from Stuttgart in Nick Voltemade. That's an 80 million euros deal. So we can cross them off. Aston Villa is still there. Napoli had looked, but it looks like they're going to get Rasmus Højlund over the line. So at the moment, I think Bayern is the most likely destination. But if that doesn't come off, Aston Villa still can't be discounted. And my expectation is Jackson will go, much like Nkunku, and then Chelsea are going to try, in addition to a left winger, and add another number 10. Let's see if it's Xavi Simons or Fermin Lopez or another surprise between now and the end of the window.
Ben Jacobs, one of the busiest men in the world right now. Thank you very much indeed. The latest here on Transfer Insiders. We're going to take a look at some of the big transfer stories from the last 24 hours. So stay with us on talkSPORT. That's next.
quite interesting and even involves Sir David Attenborough. I know. Here's the tale. Tennis has its roots in 12th century France when people used to make balls from all sorts. Cork, wool, chalk, animal fur and even human hair. Uniformity was found centuries later when people started making balls out of something called vulcanized rubber, invented in the US. But the balls kept on breaking, so a British lawyer, who also loved tennis, suggested they put a flannel covering on the outside.
On 1089 and 1053 medium wave, on DAB, online and on your smart speaker.
Totally topical transfer talk.
Fabulous stuff.
The Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT.
This is the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. I'm Hugh Woozencroft. Alongside me is former Chelsea defender Scott Minto. This is your whistle-stop tour of the biggest transfer news of the day. Now, earlier on the show, talkSPORT's chief football correspondent Alex Crook joined us and broke the news that Newcastle have agreed terms for a brand new striker.
Fee agreed for the Stuttgart forward, Nick Voltemade. He's a player they've been looking at for some time. Couldn't agree a deal earlier in the summer. Obviously pivoted to other targets, most notably Jurgen Strand-Larsen at Wolves. Had 2 offers rejected for him. There was a conversation in the last 24 hours between Jurgen Strand-Larsen and the Wolves hierarchy, during which he expressed a desire to leave. They made it clear, I'm told, that wouldn't happen in this window. So he will stay. Newcastle now not expected to come back for him. Good news for Wolves fans, but Voltemade on his way to St James's Park. 70 million euros up front, I'm told, with 5 million euros in add-ons. That is a club record signing. He's 6'6", he's tall, he's gangly, he's very much in the Alexander Isak mould. And I think this will give Liverpool encouragement to make a second offer for Alexander Isak, and that Newcastle will now potentially be ready to cash in on their star striker.
So, yeah, that's the good point, I think. The key point from Alexander Crook at the end there, which is Alexander Isak could be on his way to Liverpool, we think, but certainly out of Newcastle United. Does this move for Nick Voltemade mean that we're likely to see a huge British transfer record deal next week?
Yes, I think so. There was a part of me the last couple of days thinking, I don't know if it's going to happen, because I think Newcastle have said to Liverpool, don't even bother coming in with another bid until we get people in. And it looked like they were struggling to get, Visser in, and obviously they still are, but still want it. But now they've got Voltemade, and it's a big move for the youngsters. He's a young foreign player moving to the north of England, incredibly passionate fans, but it's a lot of money. Although the same happened with Alexander Isak, around about £60 million. So if Eddie Howe can make him as good as he helped make Isak, then it would prove to be an absolutely brilliant signing. And certainly he's got time on his side, but I still, again, hopefully he's got the mindset of going abroad, and I'm going to absolutely smash it, and I can't wait to play in England.
It'll be interesting to see if they can get Visser and they've got Voltemade, whether they can replace what Alexander Isak brought to the team. Because in my mind, as good a player as Voltemade is, supposedly, he is a young, developing player.
Yes.
He's back to when Isak arrived from Real Sociedad. He's a project. He needs a couple of years to blossom. So where does that put, in my mind, where does that put Newcastle in the Premier League? Does that move them slightly down the table to a team that is fighting around 5th, 6th, 7th, possibly losing a player as good as Alexander Isak, which obviously hasn't happened yet, but seems more likely after this news?
Well, that could have been the case anyway, because they're having to now combine Premier League with Champions League, and we know the last time it happened, then the Newcastle struggled to do that.
Yeah.
You're now going to lose your best player. Look, I've said all along this is all about the owners and what they want to do. Yes, they're hamstrung by PSR in terms of going out and spending hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds, but they don't need the money. They don't need to sell. But if they believe that the best thing, whether they want to do it for Isak's, because he's been a great pro up until now for Newcastle, whether they think we can't have this type of bad apple in our dressing room, for whatever the reason, I think by bringing in and spending it's a lot of money on a young player, potential player, great potential. We know that Bayern Munich wanted him, but they're spending that Premier League tax over £60 million on him, and I think by doing that, They are absolutely paving the way for the Isak deal to go through. And I wouldn't be surprised if they go something similar on Visser as well, which is not what Keith Andrews and Brentford want.
Can I ask you a question which is slightly unrelated, but we've done a lot of business, Premier League clubs, with Germany this summer. Obviously, it's related to Voltemada, but unrelated to Newcastle. I just wanted to ask you generally around the production of centre-forwards in this country. I know they're not all from Germany, but Benjamin Šeško's come from Leipzig, Hugo Ekitike's come from Frankfurt, Voltemada's going to come from Stuttgart, and we're spending big money on these players. It's not like they're scoring 25s and 30s in the Bundesliga. Why are Premier League clubs so keen to spend that money on players from that league?
I think the Bundesliga is probably the closest to, in terms of the big leagues around Europe, it's probably in terms of physicality the closest to the Premier League. I'm not saying it is as physical, but it's the closest to. So if you can do it in the Bundesliga, there's a thought pattern that actually the step up isn't so big. I think we've seen with a lot of players that actually it's still very, very big indeed. But in terms of style of play, it's not a million miles away from the physicality of the Premier League. So perhaps that's why they've done it. I personally would like to see them dipping more into the EFL and go into the Championship. But actually, there's a Premier League tax on that, whether it's English players or just foreign players who are playing in the Championship. But that's how I would like to see it. But there's no doubt about it. People need to buy for the here and now, not necessarily for the future, although they are buying youngsters and that. And on that kind of that thought pattern, I understand the buy young, try and get them good, and hopefully you can sell them for a better price. But you need good players now. And centre forwards is the most, along with goalkeeper, is the most pressurised position on the pitch. You look at Højlund. You know, he's a good player, but he struggled at Manchester United. Yeah. United need senior pros who are able to put the ball in the back of the net. And that's why this one, it's a gamble, but it worked for Isak, and certainly Newcastle will be hoping it works this time around as well.
Okay, well, Newcastle getting Nick Voldemar from Stuttgart. We think it's going to be £64 million. A little bit earlier on, our European football expert, Andy Brassell, was with us here on talkSPORT, and he is very hot on Voldemar.
I think he'll be a really good addition, and it's really impressive how they've kept this on the down low, because that's been the problem with their summer so far, isn't it? That they keep getting gazumped by other clubs. I think if you're looking for someone who's quite a faithful replacement for Isak with a high upside, I'm not sure you could have signed many better players than him, because he's a big guy, he's 6'6", but he's not your typical target man. He likes to drop, he likes to dribble. When Bayern wanted him, and Bayern were very keen, as I said, they wanted him not just as backup to Harry Kane, they thought he could play with Harry Kane. I don't know if there are many higher compliments than that, because he's got very high football intelligence. He doesn't lose the ball very often. And funnily enough, he's constantly progressing.
So that's the report from Andy Brassell. We got to trust it on Nick Voldemar.
Sounds a bit like an Alexander Isak, doesn't he?
Well, yeah, I was going to ask you, how does he replace Isak? Will it be all about goals, or will it be about bringing others into play, holding the ball up? Is he going to have to play differently to what Isak provided for Newcastle? Not. I get it in terms of output. Yeah. It's going to be different. But in terms of tactically how they set up, will they have to change?
I think Eddie would want him to do be as close to what Isak has done as possible. Now, that's not easy, because he's just about to go for, or we think he may well go for 120, 130 million pounds. You're talking about a youngster who's going for 60 odd million pounds. But again, that was what Isak did just a few years ago. I think ultimately, although strikers can be very, very selfish, how will he be judged? Some people will judge him on goals. I judge on how the team does. How does he fit into the team and help the team better? And if he doesn't get the 20-odd goals, but he gets 10 to 15, but actually Newcastle are able to go reasonably deep into the Champions League and still finish in a Champions League place next season, while assisting in a lot of goals, that for me, I'd judge him in that way. You know, but there'll be a lot of people out there who will judge him purely on goals. But I think they realise now Isak is one of the best strikers in the world, so it's very difficult to compare to him.
We're going to have more on the Transfer Insiders. Some big deals coming up very, very soon, certainly concerning Chelsea and Alejandro Garnacho, so stay with us for that. But I do have to give you a little bit of an update. There's now 5 minutes left of normal time. Hibernian holding on against Legia. That would-be red card for Junior Hoylett was overturned. So they've still got 11, still clinging on, trying to get a place in the Conference League and join Aberdeen, also from the Scottish Premiership, who missed out on a place in the Europa League league phase with a 3-0 defeat against FCSB a little bit earlier on. No mistake for Crystal Palace. It was a goalless draw away at Fredrikstad. They will be in the Conference League draw midday tomorrow here on talkSPORT. But you're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. It's 18 plus. BeGambleAware.org. This is the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. I am Hugh Woozencroft. Alongside me is Scott Minto, and this is your whistle-stop tour of the biggest transfer news of the day. Now, earlier, talkSPORT's transfer guru Ben Jacobs joined us to discuss Chelsea agreeing a deal with Manchester United for the 21-year-old Argentina international Alejandro Garnacho. Chelsea have agreed a £40 million fee. Here's what he had to say.
The fee is 40 million fixed and it suits all parties. There's a 10% sell-on as well. And Garnacho's agreed a 7-year deal. And we reported for much of the window that Chelsea was starting at 25-30 million. Manchester United wanted 50 million. They've met halfway. Garnacho wanted the move. And I think for Manchester United, it suits them also to do a sale, both in terms of the player and Ruben Amorim not seeing eye to eye from a philosophical or football point of view, and the fact that this is pure profit on the books as well. So Garnacho will now formalise the move. It was never really in doubt, but interestingly, Chelsea choosing to complete Garnacho today after selling Christopher Nkunku to Milan for 42 million euros, whereas Xavi Simons, who maybe as a central player is more like for Nkunku, his future still has a big question mark over it, with Chelsea keen, but also Tottenham really pushing.
Now, Manchester United spinning this as a big positive has slightly irked me as a United fan. Not just for the money. I think he's probably worth more than 40 million with a 10% sell-on clause. But it's more selling him to Chelsea. And I know you can say, well, where was the market for him elsewhere, and would they have got that money, etc., etc. The idea that Manchester United managed this process really well for me is absolute nonsense. The reports were out 24 hours after the Europa League final that the manager had told him to his face in front of the rest of the players to find a new club. So you're already behind the 8 ball in terms of your negotiations, how those stories have got out. If the manager actually did that, then it was always going to get out, particularly if Garnacho is the one that you believe was leaking stories. So again, I don't think it was managed great from that perspective. And obviously him going to Chelsea, where I think that, a lot of clubs would have drawn the line. Listen, he's a really good young player, could go on to have an incredible career in the game. We don't want him to be scoring against us every other weekend. You can leave the club if you want to leave the club. You're going to have to go somewhere else outside the Premier League. We didn't draw that line in the sand.
Yeah, but
Alejandro Garnacho.
I understand what you're saying there, but they may well have gone abroad. They may well have told his agent, first of all, you look abroad, we're not going English. We're just a few days away now from the deadline day.
Yeah, but Garnacho doesn't have a huge salary. It's not like saying Jadon Sancho.
Yeah, but who has he ever been linked to a foreign club?
Yeah, Napoli.
And what happened there?
I don't know, but the point is, you don't have to sell him You don't have to sell him immediately.
No, of course you don't.
He's the kind of player that you could have held on to had you managed the relationship slightly differently.
So
and sold him for the amount you want outside the Premier League when that time was right for you.
I don't agree.
Instead, you put your hands up to the market and said, you can have him basically for less than we think he's worth because the relationship has completely fallen apart.
I don't agree that they could have sold him abroad. We just don't know that. We don't know. Napoli may have been interested. They may not have been interested. We don't know that there's a concrete bid at all. So as far as I'm concerned, abroad wasn't an option because just being linked by Napoli doesn't mean to say they could have sold him to them. What it does tell me, and there's a bigger picture here, is that the board for the now, Manchester United board, are backing Amorim. Because it's Amorim who's fallen out with him. It's Amorim who apparently has told him you're not playing for this club again. It's Amorim who has said go and find another club. And we're just a few days away now, and he's done just that. And there's no doubting his talent. I've not appreciated the way he's dealt with things. And I think he's lacked a lot of class, and that's one way of putting it. But he is a talented boy, and that's exactly what Manchester United need right now. And he's one of the few players last season who, when he did get on the ball, looked like something could happen. So the fact that he has gone tells me that Amorim, for now, is going nowhere.
What about Garnacho to Chelsea? How good a move is that, bringing him in for the club in particular?
I think from a Chelsea angle, it's a really good move. Again, Enzo Maresca's got to deal with someone who clearly has a bit of an attitude, but he's got to be able to deal with that. Would Maresca have a choice? Is it the owners saying, look, on paper, this is a great deal, so we're going to do it, whatever, and you've got to deal with it? But even just from a playing point of view, you've got Neto and Palmer, who start clearly, definitely, if they're fit. Then you've got Esteval, who looks like a fantastic talent, but he's only 18. Gittins is still getting to used to life at Stamford Bridge and didn't even play for Dortmund towards the end of last season. Tyreek George, Santos, Nkunku's gone now, and Mudrik's not available. So if Chelsea want to combine Premier League, Champions League and domestic cups, crazily enough, in terms of quality of strength in depth going forwards, I think they do need him out wide.
Will he be a starter for Chelsea, in your mind?
I think he can become a starter, yes. I think if you've got Neto on one side, Palmer down the middle, and Garnacho on the left, I think Esteval, as I say, because he's still so young, he needs to be managed. Gittins, we don't yet know whether he can deal with a full season in the Premier League, playing week in, week out. So, I think absolutely he can. He's Premier League ready. And that's something which a lot of clubs, we talked about why have the Premier League clubs, a lot of Premier League clubs gone out for number 9 to Germany. There's still a big jump from the Bundesliga to the Premier League. He is Premier League ready.
I'd be concerned slightly, not by the talent, obviously, of Garnacho, but bringing in youthful players that Chelsea have in the shape of Gittins, who has played in the Champions League for Dortmund. Garnacho, I don't think he has played in the Champions League. Maybe he has for Manchester United in his early days, but I wouldn't call him like a proven Champions League player, nor Gittins, for that matter. For a club of Chelsea stature, who will want to go and do big things and go deep in the Champions League. They're the world champions. So, you know, for them, you do the European competition.
Say that bit again. They're what?
Well, you can listen back on the
they're world champions
on the talkSPORT app. But the point is, you know, can these guys carry that mantle? Do you think? Because it's you've now got through the middle, with respect, Liam Delap, who was playing for Ipswich, João Pedro, who was playing for Brighton, who looks very, very good. This has nothing to do with talent. I'm just talking about carrying the mantle in terms of going deep in the Champions League. You've got Garnacho, you've got Gittins. Okay, there's Pedro Neto on the other side. I think this might be his first season in the Champions League, certainly since he arrived at Wolves and then arrived at Chelsea. So it's been a while since he's been playing, if he has played at that level as well. So now suddenly you're looking at the front areas for Chelsea, wanting to go deep in this competition, but lacking that kind of proven experience at this level. Is that a concern at all?
I mean, you just said about Gittins has played in the Champions League. And if you're looking for real proven experience, then you're looking for more senior pros, and that's not what Chelsea do. So, you know, that's not their angle. That's not the way they've gone down. I've been critical.
But in terms of going far in the competition, do you think it obviously, well, I don't know. Do you think it helps? Do you think it's a hindrance? What is it?
They're Club World Champions. You know, within a month, they've turned around where I certainly didn't see it coming, was absolutely delighted. And not just Club World Champions, but absolutely out PSG. They were superb in that final. So in terms of what can they do, there's potential there. I have been critical, and I still feel they need a goalkeeper, and a senior goalkeeper at that. I don't think they're going to get that, and that's why I would say, look, they're not going to win the Premier League this coming season, and they're not going to win the Champions League. But I think they can get better and better as a team. And if they stop bringing in players and selling players and keep on doing what they're doing, as much as the balance sheet looks good, I think they've got every chance next season. But I think they can finish in the top 4, qualify for Champions League again, get deep in the Champions League, because they've already shown they're very good in the cup competition, and also maybe go very deep in another domestic cup. That, for me, would seem to be progression again. And then next season, try and kick on even more.
Yeah, I think they can do it. There's plenty of talent there.
If they got Donnarumma and Mark Gay in, then I'd be like, wow, now we're talking.
Do you think they do need to do more business before the window closes now?
I think they need a keeper. I think Robert Sanchez had the game of his career in the final. But even earlier on in the tournament, and I covered a lot of games for talkSPORT, I felt he conceded goals that perhaps he shouldn't have done. I think towards the end of last season, he got a lot better, but I still feel he's not as solid as what you would need. And if they got a Mike Maignan or a Donnarumma in, suddenly those goals you don't concede, you're not under pressure. Teams, if you haven't conceded that first goal, teams can't then dictate to you how they're playing. That first goal, if you look at the stats, are always so, well, not always, but the majority of the time, so crucial, because then that team who scores the first goal is suddenly on, right, we're going to play this way and we're going to sit back and we're going to make it even harder to break us down. So, yeah, fascinating to see what they do. That's what I would do, a goalkeeper, but I don't think they will now.
There is news regarding Manchester United.
Go on.
Breaking news. It's a managerial sacking for their former boss, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Besiktas have decided to move on from him. What? Following their...
That was very good, Hugh.
Following their 2-1 aggregate defeat to Lausanne in the Conference League playoffs tonight. He was only appointed in January of this year. So, a rough 24 hours for managers associated with Manchester United. However, if United do need an interim...
You said, didn't you? You said if they're going to sack him, you would choose Ole.
If they do need an interim, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is now available. I'm just saying, maybe Ole will be back at the wheel. We shall see. And just to let you know, Legia Warsaw got a 93rd minute goal, which means it's 4-4 on aggregate. They've gone to extra time with Hibernian. So we'll try and keep you up to date with that one. Hibernian trying to get themselves into the Conference League a little bit earlier on. Shelburne knocked out Linfield of Northern Ireland. Shamrock Rovers made it through. So did Crystal Palace. Lincoln Reds of Gibraltar went out against Braga, and Aberdeen missed out on the Europa League as well. This has been the Transfer Insiders. The show is live tomorrow on radio, YouTube, Smart TV, and the talkSPORT app from 7 p.m. You can catch the podcast on Apple, Spotify, Acast, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Coming up next here on talkSPORT, it's the Sports Bar with the clowns themselves, Jamie O'Hara and Jason Cundy. That's next.